OTB AM.
With Gillette. Get into your flow with the new Gillette Labs Razor with exfoliating bar.
7:30 Friday morning. You're very welcome along to OTB AM. Adrian with you until 10 this morning. Aisling, how are you getting on?
Morning, Adrian. All good now. How are you?
Good. Kathleen, how are you doing?
I'm doing well. How are you?
All good. Packed and stacked stew this morning. Loads to come between now and 10 this morning. It's a veritable feast of football, particularly on the show this morning, and a few other bits and pieces thrown in as well. And like picking across the newspapers this morning, needless to say, across the front pages, because like you've got stuff like the Irish Daily Mirror, and they tend to carry obviously a lot of the UK stories, and that's kind of repeated across most of the papers this morning, and reflected as well, to be fair, in Irish only papers like the Independent and the Times and that kind of stuff as well. And sure, why wouldn't it be? Obviously, given the enormity of it on a global stage. We're talking, of course, about the passing of the Queen yesterday, and the impact on sport is going to be felt. Just how much is kind of the thing that we're sort of waiting to see. We believe that there'll be some sort of announcements maybe over the course of the morning, maybe even in relation to the Premier League this weekend, potentially knock on with Europe next week. And I'm not really sure, actually, where I'm at on the whole thing. Selfishly, I'm going to miss the football if it gets pulled. That's sort of my main starting point. And my main reaction when the idea was first put out there yesterday that maybe sport gets canned for the weekend or beyond was like, really? Is there a need? Could we not just go ahead and don't we use sport all the time as this sort of public showing of respect for various things? So couldn't we just bash away like they did last night? And I know that UEFA were pressing hard that those games went ahead last night. They weren't really hanging around for any kind of postponement. They were pretty gung-ho, but there was a great show of respect. Obviously before the game there was whatever they call it now, a moment of silence, whatever that is, and the armbands and all that stuff. So we could have bashed ahead, and that. So my stronger leaning is towards, could we not just go ahead and just play all the sport and do whatever we need to on that front? There's something nice and quaint and old-fashioned about the idea of pulling the sport for the weekend or maybe beyond, but mostly, could we not just go ahead and play it?
Yeah, I think that is my feeling as well. And yeah, maybe a bit selfishly, also, but you don't know where then how the games will be played. If it's this weekend, it's maybe 10 days now until the Queen is buried, so you don't know how it'll pan out. So maybe on the day, which is I think next Sunday, is that a day that you have all the games pulled then and play them until then, and you have the moment silence, you have the armband, you show your respect that way. But yeah, I'm not sure what way it should work out, but yeah, I think just pulling sport all together, it's an enjoyment thing. It's the Queen herself, she was massive into horse racing, and she loved her sport, so it's a way to enjoy it and to show your respect, rather than not having those moments to show your respect. In a way, you're not having those moments silence, not having the armbands. It's a way of actually I suppose displaying it in a nice way, and a way that people can enjoy it, because for a lot of people the Queen's passing will affect them quite a lot in England. So I do think having sport should only be but a positive thing. So for me, I don't really see the reason to pull the sport completely. Now maybe on Sunday, when it's the day that she's being put to rest, well, maybe that's the day.
Yeah, that would make sense, or a couple of days around that. And look, I am conscious as well, Kathleen, that we're not living in the UK, and so it's hard to not currently living in the UK, Kathleen, I might say in your instance. It's hard for us then to fully sort of have a finger on the pulse of exactly the mood of a nation, but it is. The monarchy in the UK does tend to be conflicted anyway, and I'm assuming that whatever your allegiances are in that way, whether you're a royalist or not, will probably dictate some of your opinion around this. But so I am conscious of that when we make those comments. But I get it, but also, can we just go ahead and play some matches?
Yeah, well, I feel bad in the sense that obviously it's bad that the Queen has passed, and I feel sorry for anyone who feels about it, but also with say the WSL or something, they were supposed to hold games in Stamford Bridge and some of the big stadiums this weekend, and they can't do that now. And I think that it's a bit like Aisling was saying, if you are going to mark someone, why not mark them in an act of celebration and an act of actually going out and doing things? And I think if you look at the Queen's legacy, she was very much the sort of person who said, go out and do things, live your life. actually participate, and the idea of stopping it all, I don't know if that's the sort of thing that she would have subscribed to. I was over living in London for the Jubilee, and it was absolute madness for the 2 weeks in and around the actual event, so I can't even imagine what it's going to be like for the next week while people are mourning and while people are going through the whole process. She was there for so long, but like you said, it'd be kind of nice to have sport there, to have it as a distraction, and also just to have those acts of celebration, have those moments where you're commemorating her and not just having empty space, which is kind of what it feels like it's going to be like for the next 10 days or so until she's actually buried.
And there's obviously there's a protocol around all this stuff that dictates, and everybody's read the Guardian article at this point with the nuts and bolts of exactly.
Most read article in the Guardian yesterday.
Was it really?
Yeah.
Right. I'd seen it floating around a while and I'd never really got the motivation to read it, I have to say, until yesterday.
Except for you then, Adrian. Everyone except Adrian.
And yeah, I don't know. We will see how all that pans out. In the most Irish way of all time, we might be set to benefit from some European games next week if this all goes the way it looks as if it's going to at the minute. If the UK was to enter that period of mourning, then they would be obliged to not host games. And it's reported on some of the back pages this morning that possibly we can receive at the Aviva Dublin an option for Euro clashes, says Neil O'Riordan in The Sun, that some of the games might end up coming over here. I wouldn't be averse to going to see United Dublin next week. I'm not going to lie, that would be that landed into my lap. I'd be all right with that.
Could they actually pull it together in the time though? It's such a short amount of time to actually be able to prep the city, or even just in terms of fans travelling or actually getting the stadium ready or the surroundings of the stadium.
Yeah, there's a lot of logistics in that, but I suppose at the same time they probably just they want to get the games played, wouldn't it? They probably would make sure that they could get it done.
I think UEFA, when it comes to it, have ways and means, don't they? Isn't that
big time.
Of all the organisations we're talking about. So look, we'll see, and we've loads of people coming on over the course of the morning to talk about the football last night. Looking ahead to, I'm going to say looking ahead to the weekend. Who knows what that looks like? And we'll get a bit of a sense of what the atmosphere was like at the various grounds as well. Last night, Dominic Fifield and Daniel Harris amongst those coming on to talk to us. There was also some pretty ugly scenes in Tala last night as Shamrock Rovers played Djurgården in the Conference League. And there's a clip going around on social media with some of the fans singing some pretty derogatory and distasteful stuff in a way that we'd be outraged if it was some other team singing it about somebody in this country. It was it's just not pretty. It's just not the sort of stuff. There's a bit of groupthink about it, and suddenly everybody's singing it, and it's bad luck for Ireland this morning.
Yeah, it doesn't matter what your views are of the Queen. There's many people that don't agree. They're not royalists. They don't agree with the monarchy, but that's fine. Everybody has their opinions, but to do something like that, is just so wrong, and it shouldn't be brought into sport. I hate when that sort of thing is brought into sport. It's not the reason why we love sport. It's not the reason a lot of us follow sport. It was sad to see, and it was sad to see that it was here at home. But yeah, I know everybody has different views, but it's just not on in my view. It's just disgusting to hear those chants yesterday.
Yeah, and I'm sure there'll be more fallout out of it. Gavin Cooney, the 42, was at Tal Stadium last night, so we'll get his thoughts on it and exactly how that played out within the ground as well a little bit later in the show. Plenty of comments coming in as well, obviously in relation to this. Most of them you can't read out because people get sort of very carried away one side or the other, but there is that sort of sense of we're going to be missing games for a while, and also even in a World Cup year, Kathleen, if you look at it on that level in terms of the squeeze on fixtures, this is going to be very, very tricky for organisers.
Yeah, it's going to be tight, and you don't really know where they're actually going to be able to fit it back in. And I always feel bad talking about fixtures in that sort of sense, even when I said earlier about the fact that Chelsea won't be able to play at Stamford Bridge this weekend if the fixtures are cancelled. It probably pales in comparison to what a lot of people are feeling or what a lot of people are going through, and it's a bit like we were saying for next week. You make these fixtures work when you want to make them work, but it's already such a stuffed season that I don't actually know. It could get to the end where I imagine it won't, but you wouldn't be surprised if they did just say it was a bye weekend or something and just kind of gave everyone the same amount of points rather than trying to fit it into the rest of the year, because between the World Cup and Champions League and all the Europe fixtures, there isn't a whole lot of time to actually put on extra games.
Yeah, Yeah, well, that will be one of the challenges that comes down the track. And I see Sean Ingle of The Guardian as well, summing it up nicely in the last few minutes. He says several UK sports are meeting this morning to discuss whether to play this weekend. It also makes the point that the Great North Run is due to take place, which raises millions for charity, and asking the question whether people would prefer to sport to carry on with the 2-minute silence and flags lowered as a mark of respect, or no sport next week. I kind of get from what he's saying there the way he's leaning, and I'm probably kind of with that, but with the caveat that, like, you know, we're not there, and so it is difficult to say. Mark Dunning has been in contact, and morning to you, Mark. He says, speaking selfishly, I think they should play the games. Match-going fans have already made travel accommodation arrangements, and yes, I'm including myself amongst those who have made arrangements. There is that factor as well. Of course, there'll be so many people here who've got flights booked and tickets booked. They'll be leaving this morning probably to go to a game at the weekend.
Wondering if it's going to happen. That's right. Yeah,
exactly. Yeah. So people are in a tricky position. The other thing that people have booked loads of tickets for, and you know, my research tells me it starts tonight. Aisling is Gareth Brooks at Croke Park. I was really taken, I have to say, by one of the stories in one of the papers this morning about, I think it was in the Mirror, Gareth Brooks and how he's going to dance through the rain, he says.
There's a hurricane on the way and he's going to dance through the rain.
There's a hurricane. Hurricane Danielle is winging its way towards Ireland at the minute.
Didn't even know that.
Yeah, exactly. See, it's going to be the tail end of it. I think. Look, it might be. Who knows what happened? How it ends up by the time it hits these shores. But he said that, you know, he's waited for so long for this thing, and he said, now I hear there are hurricanes coming, but I don't care. I'm going to dance in the rain if I have to. In like the most Gareth Brooks comment of all time. I mean, I think if there's a hurricane winging its way to Ireland, whether Gareth dances his way through the rain or not is of very little significance. It would kind of be the perfect end to
this story, wouldn't it? With the way everything has gone over the last few years.
That's what he was saying.
Yeah. Finally he gets here and there's a hurricane that, I don't know, cancels it or makes the whole thing a bit.
But I love the way he's like, well, what am I going to do when the hurricane hits? I mean, what about the 80,000 people that are in you know, these like 150 foot high staging and speakers and all this like dangerous equipment flying around? But like, what's Gareth going to do? That's the big question.
And you're one of the 80,000 that's going to be there.
I'm not. I'm not. You're not, obviously. If you're
no. And geez, like, I'd say it'll be a great night, and yeah, like, people have waited so long for it, but wouldn't be my number one choice in music now. But I'm sure he puts on a great show. He said that he lost something like 3 stone in order to get ready for this.
Right.
Yeah. So they're in for a good show.
I was out in Drumcondra the other night and I saw the like lights going on in Croke Park and they're obviously practicing. You could actually hear him warming up and stuff, and I was like, you didn't even need a ticket. You could just kind of be going up the main street in Drumcondra and you'd hear the whole thing.
Yeah, look, I don't know. Somebody was making the point here a couple of weeks ago that, you know, if they got a free ticket, they'd go. I'm sort of in that camp.
Adrian's looking for a free ticket.
Yeah. Hurricane for Gareth Brooks, every cloud, I suppose, says Danny Mack here. And Lade Larry says about the passing of the Queen that she was 70 years on the throne. I think one weekend off as a mark of respect won't hurt anyone, just to show that there is that duality of opinion, I guess, out there. Coming up at 7:45 this morning, and Aisling, you're just back from Slovakia. Just off the plane yourself?
Yes, yeah. It was brilliant. Yeah, lovely city. I don't know if you have ever been over to Bratislava before, but yeah, really nice city, really quaint city. Sort of a smaller version of Prague is the way that I would describe it. Yeah, really nice. And yeah, obviously Ireland getting the result there, getting the win. So it was brilliant. I suppose overall, just reporting on it, there was a few probably surprising factors from reporting there. On the day before the game, you know, they always have a press conference with each management, and we'd sit with maybe a player as well ahead of the game. And we actually hadn't heard anything about the Slovakia press conference when it was going to be. So we had reached out to the Irish press officer, Gareth, and he said, you know, there isn't any. And we were like, that's strange. No, there's always one before the game. And he said, oh, well, I can say it to them. So he actually reached out to them and said, you know, are you having a press conference? Do you want to have one? And they said, oh, we just don't really see the need. We don't normally have one. And that was because they don't really have much press attending the press conferences. So we said no, that we'd head along. And now for the Irish to go to the press conference, there was other Irish journalists over as well. There was maybe 35 minutes in the difference going one way and then on to the Irish one. So, you know, we had quite a bit of travel in terms of going 35 minutes that way, then another 35 minutes the opposite way. But we wanted, that's why we're there. We wanted to go to the press conference. And, you know, they were quite surprised when we walked in. You know, they were like, how many of you are there? And will there be more at the game? And I was wondering, what do they mean? Do they want us here? I was surprised what was happening, but they were actually just genuinely surprised that there was this many journalists over here to cover the game. And then when the game itself, there was one man sitting beside me that wasn't in the Irish contingency, and he was actually from FIFA. I thought he was the one Slovakian journalist that was there covering the game, but there actually wasn't. Now, I didn't see any. I said it to some of the journalists afterwards. I was like, was there any Slovakian journalists here? He said no, there wasn't one. So yeah, quite
even
bizarre.
At the game?
Not even at the game.
It's
Desperate. It was so bizarre, and it was just sad. It was very sad. Like, I asked the Slovakian manager, Peter Kopun, about the amount of people that are going to attend today. Is there going to be much supporters, fans attending? And he sort of smiled before he answered and was just like, just what there normally is. And
Not
I
many.
just thought, yes, we all just looked at each other and were like, okay. And the attendance in the end was 490. So, yeah.
Well, if it's not going to get the press coverage,
No.
sure, that's family and friends. Like,
How are
isn't
you
it?
meant to
That's-
build this game? I just was so shocked. I was like, how are you going to get the Slovakian people to come out and watch the game to support these women in like a brilliant team? They just haven't had that big win yet, but they're a really great team.
But
So
especially for a game that they probably could have got something out of as
Yeah.
well. It's not like we went into that as absolute like we should have been absolute favourites, but from the way we had performed against them before, they probably could have got a win, and with the way we played, they definitely could have got a win. We were just quite lucky with the way it ended up.
yeah, oh, absolutely, yeah. So it was quite shocking that there wasn't anyone. Like, everyone else around the grounds, lovely, like really accommodating. Couldn't have made us, more friendly and like accommodating to all of us. Like, they were shocked we were still there so late after the game. They kept coming in and out of the press room being like, are you finished yet? But they obviously don't always have this many journalists. But yeah, it was sad to see. But yeah, I just don't understand how you're going to build the game if you
crazy,
don't put it
yeah.
in
And
the
like,
papers and the radio.
Even when things were bad here, not that long ago, there was at least some press turning up to cover the thing.
Yeah, but also if you look at like when we actually properly qualified after that game in Slovakia, like the papers the next day, there was actually very little coverage of and I know we kind of knew we were already qualifying, but it was still a big deal. Like, that was the official moment, and I imagine if it was Stephen Kenny and the lads qualifying for that sort of level, you would, like Emma, one of our producers here, we were joking that there'd be like a 72-page pull-out and you'd have posters of all the lads, but like it even struggled to make some of the back pages the next morning. And I know we can say other places it is sad that people didn't turn up, but I do still think we're trying to bridge the gap here slightly as well. I kind of hoped that more of the papers would have put a bit more effort into what they were reporting on about it, and like I know the draw is today, and that'll actually show where we're going and who we have to beat to make it to the World Cup. But it was a big moment in Irish football history, and I kind of wish that a bit more was put into it on that side of things.
Yeah, there's always a bit of a prod to tell everybody to give it more coverage, and better coverage is never a bad thing. And you're right about that. I don't know, did United play that day, and that seemed to take up some of the bigger space on some of the back pages. I mean, just in the context of the Slovakia thing, most of those pages who even squeezed it a bit on the back pages had some sort of something on the front page of the paper. They had like some sort of a section saying something to do with Koi gig. So, like, look, there's a road to travel, and as I said, they definitely need a bit of a prod, but it just feels like something from the dark ages. If they can't, like, what hope do the team have if they can't get a single journalist to turn up to the game? It's pretty desperate.
And there was quite a big Irish contingency there, like fans wise. The Slovak Shamrock's GA club I had met over there, they all arrived in their jerseys, so we had actually quite a big support.
Probably more Irish than Slovakian, was there?
It definitely was close, because obviously they were sitting on two sides, and the Irish side was fairly full. So and they were maybe travelling fans. There was some that travelled, there was some expats, obviously they're living over there. So there probably was even amount of supporters, which is surprising in your home country not to have more.
Isolt was in touch, and good morning to you, Isolt. She says, for events like boxing in London, football across the UK, people have incurred big costs to travel, etc. But put in context, if our head of state died in office, all GEA would be cancelled too, and also it's once in a 70-year event, and they were quick to take the Jubilee Day off. That is fair enough. And that's the point about like not wanting to entirely miss the tone of the thing, just because we're not there, we're not fully off air with exactly how that's playing out. And yeah, so that's that. And the draw at 12:30 today that we need to mention as well, Kathleen. We don't want to sort of like fully go through the rigours again of exactly what's going to happen here. But
I love talking about it, Adrian. I've done it so much this
I do
week.
too.
It's my favourite thing.
I also can't wait for the draw just to be done, and then we can actually have something to talk about.
Yeah, no, I'm very much the same. I'm intrigued to see who we get, and it was very easy earlier in the week to maybe get a little bit wrapped up in the fact we'd even made a playoff, or that there was the potential of going to the World Cup. It did feel like we were actually heading to the tournament, and I don't mind that either. Like, I think you see the scenes with like the likes of Katie McCabe and Denise O'Sullivan and the absolute relief, and you're allowed to enjoy it for the time it is, but today will be the real show of what we can actually do over the next couple of weeks, or if it even goes into the new year. I think it probably will. At the end of the day, I feel like we're probably going to be in the Interconfederation Cup, but I think we can get out of that. So hopefully we'll all either be down in Australia or we'll be waking up very, very early in the morning to watch them at their first ever tournament.
Who would you like to get?
I actually think one of the like Celtic teams, like maybe Scotland or Wales or something, would be good, just because we know them and we know the players a lot better. Like, I would try to avoid in Australia. Even someone like Portugal, I know they're quite low ranked, but they were so impressive during the Euros, and they play a very different type of football to what we're used to. You know, it's very technical, it's quick passing, it's one touch. And I think, especially in this qualifying campaign, we've got very used to some of the more physical teams, the teams that kind of like dominate over the ball, and I don't know how we would face up against a team like that. I think at the end of the day, we probably should be able to take them, but I would rather someone that we actually know the measure of than a team like that.
Yeah, 12:30, we'll have something concrete to talk about, and we won't have to keep speculating. I absolutely can't wait for that. And a quick mention as well, and for more of this, see the Koi Gig pod, but WSL obviously back this weekend, due to be back this weekend. We don't know exactly where all of that is at, of course, but the overriding thought, Kathleen, with the transfer window shut and Chelsea having farmed out players, they're basically supporting the rest of the teams with the number of players that they've farmed out on loan, but hard to see anybody getting close to them.
I think so, yeah. I think Chelsea are going to dominate once again. You even look at, like, they brought in Kadisha Buchanan at the start of the transfer window. I actually totally forgot that transfer had even happened, and she's one of the best defenders in the world. And this is the thing about Chelsea, they're doing something very similar to Barcelona, which is going to make the Champions League really interesting this year, in that they're bringing in a lot of experience so that they can win that Champions League, because they've dominated domestically, but whenever they go to Europe, they've really struggled. So I think it's going to be an interesting battle between the two of them. You look at teams like Man City, they've lost their entire midfield. I mean, Stanway, Walsh, Weir have all left. You've also lost Lucy Bronze there. I don't know if they're going to be able to compete in the same way that they have, so it gives an opportunity for the likes of, say, United, Tottenham, maybe even Liverpool, who've just come up from the Championship, have a very big Irish contingent there, but have been very impressive in general, to maybe do something and get that Champions League spot. So it's actually probably set up to be quite an interesting season, even if Chelsea are the favourites. And I think Gareth Taylor, who is with City, might be doing a bit of a Tuchel after a couple of weeks. The fans are very much not happy with him. Whenever the Walsh transfer was announced the other day, literally every single comment on Twitter underneath the tweet was Taylor out, Taylor out, Taylor out. And it's kind of nice to see, because like, you don't normally get that so much in women's football, but people were very much interested in it and very much wondering why you would lose your entire midfield and all your most experienced players in one transfer window and not really bring anyone in.
Yeah, there has been. I saw Sue Smith talking about it during the week about the exodus, and maybe some of the players they brought in, maybe they could sustain something. But yeah, I think the overriding thought, as you say, seems to be that Chelsea can't be caught. We'll see as it pans out. Thanks for the minute for that, Kathleen. We've loads to come on the show this morning. Here's a bit of a sense what's happening between now and 10. For you this morning, we've Gavin Cooney standing by the 42. We're going to pick through events in Tala last night. Daniel Harris will talk to us about Manchester United's fairly underwhelming opening game in Europe yesterday evening as well. Sports pages around about 8:30. Alan Quinlan is live in studio at 10 to 9 this morning. Is that what that says? Slightly slipped off my screen there. 10 to 9 this morning. Alan Quinlan will pick through his best 15 that he's ever played against and a couple of other talking points to talk to him as well. Dominic Fifield of The Athletic will talk about Chelsea primarily, maybe a few other bits and pieces as well, and then Billy Dardis from the show last night. So do get in contact with us this morning, wherever it is you are at. Very good morning to you. It's coming up on 8 o'clock. Do keep your comments coming into us. I want to remind you as well, of course, the Premier League, it says here, is back. The Premier League is close to getting back, and we've teamed up one of Europe's largest sports events, ticketing and hospitality companies, Champions Travel, to give you the opportunity to win a €250 Champions Travel voucher each day this week, and they can be used on Premier League match trips as well as a host of other sporting events. Daily winners will be entered into our grand prize draw, where one lucky winner will win a trip from a selection of Premier League games with flights and 2 nights accommodation included. So great prizes all told. And to enter, you can just tell us who this legendary Liverpool winger is, telling us how he spends his ideal night in.
7 o'clock Emma 8 o'clock Eastenders, 8:30 if Holby City's not on.
Let's hear it again.
7 o'clock Emma 8 o'clock Eastenders, 8:30 if Holby City's not on.
You can tweet us your guess on our main Twitter account @OffTheBall, and we will give that a spin for you again a little bit later on, where you can everybody sort of knows who it is, but we're live in studio next. It's coming up at 8 o'clock. Live in studio next with the 42's Gavin Cooney, reflecting on Shamrock Rovers' impressive draw last night in the Europa Conference League. First of all, here's our own Aisling chatting with Megan Campbell in Slovakia after Ireland's win during the week. Back after this.
Megan, congratulations. How are you feeling? You're trying to keep that smile off your face there. It's not an easy thing to do after knowing that you're qualified for a World Cup playoff.
Yeah, it's massive for us. Just very grateful, humbled. Yeah, to be back in a green jersey / orange jersey again has been incredible for me, and just unbelievable achievement what we've done tonight. We're one step further. We're not there yet, but we'll keep our feet firmly on the ground and looking forward to October.
It wasn't an easy battle out there tonight.
No, they're definitely a very physical side. I think you've seen that towards the end. They got more and more physical, trying to get us caught up in their game plan. And I think we did well to stay away from that and, compete when we needed to compete, but also be very sensible in that.
What do you think the difference is over the last year or two, that when things get tough, it doesn't faze you, you stick to the game plan?
Yeah, definitely. I think the professionalism probably in the level that more and more players have gone to with their club football, I think that just shows then the development, the maturity that you need at a professional level, and then when you take that into international level, you're going to come up against those tough opponents, and sometimes you have to be, level-headed and not get caught up in it. I think we did well with that tonight.
Oh, absolutely. And I have to ask you about your throw-ins. I'm sure everybody asks you non-stop, but where did you get this skill? Can you remember where it started for you, or was it something you were just always good at, or was it something that somebody taught to you?
Literally just something I've always been able to do. I think playing with Boyne Rovers back in Drogheda when I was a kid with the boys, and it was probably longer than the rest of the lads, and they were like, do that again, Meg. And I think just as I grew, it's gone longer, and yeah, it's a nice asset to have. I'm not sure my back will be too happy about it when I'm older, but it's currently helping us, so I'll take everything as I can.
Yeah, the Slovakian manager Peter had talked about it in the press conference yesterday, and he said that he knew all about you, that he was showing videos to the rest of the coaches, and I think it was here in 2017. Yeah, your two throw-ins got the 2 goals for Ireland. Do you remember it well?
Yeah, definitely. It was a massive occasion for us, obviously, back then as well, and thankfully we came here and we got the win again, and that was important. No matter how it goes in the net, we just needed the ball to go in the net, and thankfully it did that tonight with Denise Sullivan.
And the way you train, I know you train a little bit different to the squad. Vera has told us about it before. So what is that like? Do you do completely separate training?
No, definitely not. I do train, and I train well with the team when called upon and when that's in my schedule to do so. I think I have probably a little bit more off feet than majority of the other girls, just due to my knees and the way that I've gone with obviously previous injuries. So I think right now it's about managing my body, getting myself in the best position and the fittest position that I can to be then available for selection. And I'm really grateful for both Liverpool and the Irish squad for being able to come together and agree to that and get me in the best position, because if it wasn't for the 2 of them, I wouldn't be here today.
Yeah, it's absolutely working. And how proud are you now to be in a playoff for the World Cup? A bye in the first round, is it stuff of dreams?
It's massive. I think if you had said this to us at the start of the campaign, if you had said that I would be even playing in this competition again, it would have been, I probably wouldn't have believed you. But to play in this is incredible, to play for your country, and obviously to put us one step closer to that ultimate goal of the World Cup we're nearly there, but I think we're keeping ourselves, like I said, feet on the ground, looking forward to the next game and one more cup final, and then we're there, hopefully.
They don't make it easy, do they?
Oh, they definitely don't. I'm like, the best teams are in Europe, and you make it harder for Europe teams to get there. But, at this stage, I think we'll take anyone going into that playoff game, because I have full full trust in knowing that the girls are able to take on anybody going into that, because you don't mess with the Irish.
Yeah, nice note to leave it on there. Liverpool's Megan Campbell. Plenty more reaction up on our YouTube page. Gavin Cooney of the 42 is with us. Good morning, Gavin.
Morning. How are you?
Very good. You were in Tala last night.
I was indeed, yeah.
Good stuff.
Enjoyable night out. No goals, but enjoyable nonetheless.
It was enjoyable. I watched it. We'll talk about the football in a second, but we do want to mention the derogatory, distasteful comments, obviously, the chants that were emerging from... I was watching the game on TV last night and it just struck me how amazing the atmosphere was. And then I saw that clip this morning and it really just sort of... just a bit of an exhale about the whole thing and just so bloody needless.
Yeah, now I have to say, I didn't hear them. I didn't hear the chants. The atmosphere was really good. The Djurgården fans were really loud along with the Rovers fans. I didn't hear those chants by Queen Elizabeth, I have to say. But obviously found them on my phone that evening. I mean, there seems to be Irish Twitter was found last night. All of the descendants of the oppressed peoples across the world were looking for instruments to fight back, and one of them seems to be Irish Twitter. And these Rovers fans singing at Tala Stadium became one of their more viral clips. But not great. But
there'll be some sort of a statement, I presume, from Shamrock Rovers later on saying, "Oh, we don't endorse this," and then that'll probably be the end of it.
Probably, yeah. Look, as I said, I didn't hear them. They certainly weren't a topic of conversation among any of the press guys after the game. Didn't come up at the press conference afterwards, but but obviously they weren't very loud and didn't represent everyone on the ground, but obviously it doesn't take too many, and then the amplifying power of social media. But so there's millions of views on that tweet.
Yeah, I think the people that were around, and there was enough voices in it. There was I think maybe one fella who was sort of you could half see his face. You'd be embarrassed, I mean, to say the least, if you're involved in that, and then you wake up this morning, because a bit of groupthink, I think, sets in, and you don't want to be making excuses for it. If it was another club singing something about an Irish head of state, or there was something going on, we'd be absolutely outraged about it this morning. So there's absolutely no excuses for it. But you just hope that the people that are involved wake up at least embarrassed by whatever went on last night. It's just not a good look.
The fact that you were there, Gavin, you didn't actually hear it, so it's been amplified so much now online to make it maybe look like it was a wider thing at the game when that wasn't the case.
Yeah, completely. But then, that doesn't absolve the responsibility from the people who did sing it. So, sorry, my condemnation wasn't really strong there, and whereas yours was. So I would echo yours.
No, I look at it. I think
it's horrible.
Yeah, I think we're on the same page on it. On the football side, if it wasn't obvious before this, looking at the game last night, this is a perfect level in a lot of ways for a League of Ireland team. They put it up to Djurgården last night, played loads of football, looked really impressive, and ultimately came really close to getting all 3 points.
Stephen Bradley said he was frustrated not to win the game, and said that he felt that Rovers had the better chances and deserved to win. I think a draw was probably a fair result. Rovers could have won it, but it was pretty evenly matched. Djurgården came out at a really good pace and really high tempo, and Rovers initially struggled with it, but they got into the game. I think Chris McCann was really good in midfield for Rovers during that first half in terms of just getting on the ball and calming things down, and then Rovers came out, were by far the better side for the first maybe 20-25 minutes of the second half. Djurgården's coach described that period as a disaster for them, which I thought was a little bit OTT.
And he reacted by bringing on almost the entirety of his bench.
Quadruple sub, I mean, no one is really interested in the plight of journalists, but 7 subs in one go is a lot for our match reports. But in fairness, he wasn't taken away from Rovers either. He said, look, we made mistakes, but they forced us into it. And he said, look, a point at this stadium isn't a bad result, which is a compliment to Rovers. Yeah. And their home record's so good. They'd won all of their European home games this season so far. Beat Ludogorets, who beat Roma last night, and it beat Ferencváros, who beat Trabzonspor in both those games in the Europa League. So asked Lee Grace, did you feel like that was a step up out there last night? And he said, no, it wasn't a step up from Ludogorets and Ferencváros. So we've seen that they can hold their own in these games, and they certainly did last night.
Did they underestimate Rovers going into the game? If they had that many changes, did they maybe start out with...
No, it's a good question. He did rotate, he played a second choice goalkeeper. He picked a more attacking team than I think anyone was expecting, the Swedish journalists were expecting. Rasmus Schuller is a Finnish international. He played against Ireland in the Nations League as a substitute in 2020, and he's their kind of Claude Makelele. He's the glue that holds the cement between the stones, as Eric Ten Hag described Casemiro. And he dropped him, or he rested him and played a far more attacking midfield. And maybe that's a slight level of disrespect to Rovers. I don't know. They had their homework done nonetheless, and yeah, while their manager were disappointed with the performance, he was, as I said, realistic. That look, a point at Tala, not the worst result.
The cement between the stones, by the way. I watched the highlights after watching the Rovers game last night. Looked pretty shaky. Looked very shaky. The just on the substitutes, like it was almost like a rugby. When I saw watching on the TV, I had no appreciation that there were some Rovers players coming in as well. But when I saw the 4 players lined up, it was nearly a rugby move. Like, let's get a full, front row in here, freshen it up, and like grind them. And I thought this is going to kill Rovers. And then obviously they had their counter. But it became like gangbusters out there when the subs were made. It was just whatever template the game had been following up to that point seemed to go out the window. But it was a step up in quality almost in some ways.
Yeah, well, there's only there's 20 outfield players in the field, and they changed 7 of them between the two teams. So it was almost a totally different game, and that's interesting to see. Like, will football become like rugby in the sense that we hear all about Eddie Jones finishers, and like, do you keep players on the bench in reserve for that last half hour? So that's what I was kind of thinking. Was that what Rovers are doing? Jack Byrne, Graham Burke, Rory Gaffney all on the bench. Stephen Bradley said afterwards it was all a case of rotation. We need the squad. We're fighting on all fronts, and I trust everyone in this squad to play, and everyone will start games between now and the run-in. I think if Jack Byrne had been a bit fitter, I think he would have started. He's just pure class. Like, you could see it instantly. It made an instant impact. Dropped a gorgeous ball over the top for Rory Gaffney that the goalkeeper initially made a Hames of. Will I come? Will I not? Eventually went back and then saved really well. But I felt even Jack faded in the last 15-20 minutes, or maybe 10-15 minutes, and Rovers were looking tired at the end. I felt they weren't quite clinging on and hacking the ball away from their own goal line, but they did look tired. Those extra legs in midfield that Djurgården brought in made a difference, and threatening to overwhelm them.
Surely that's not right about the squad rotation bit when they're got 166 grand last night, which obviously dwarfs the prize for winning their own league. And if they'd won the game, obviously they would have got vast amounts more. Surely, as a club, the people who run the club are sitting down and going, listen, this other stuff is kind of important, but we need that money, so all out. I presume if Jack Byrne was fit, he would have started last night, surely.
I think so, yeah, I would think so. And he seems to be still managing this hip flexor issue. If you look at his Instagram, he's going through all kinds of treatments and hard work to try and get back and get fit again. He's had a really frustrating season, and it's a real frustration for Rovers that they haven't been able to play him in Europe yet. But they've got, and he was the talk of the Swedish journalist looking at the team sheet last night. The questions that they were asking, I was like, where's Jack Byrne? Why isn't Jack Byrne playing? And you assumed it was a fitness thing, and Stephen Bradley said afterwards it was a squad rotation issue. So that is a bit of disappointment. Now look, we talked about the money. We always talk about the money in these games. I deliberately left out my match report, and I was probably wrong on reflection to do that. It's just we get obsessed with the money, and this is about the competition and the glory of it. And Bradley was asked ahead of the game, does the money matter? And he said, no, we're here to compete, and that's understandable from his point of view. Obviously, the people above him running the club, they have to pay attention to the money, and rightly so. All I would say is that Jack Byrne didn't start, but 17-year-old Justin Farajai did start, which is amazing. And another of these academy prospects, he's so talented, he's so exciting. Did okay last night, wasn't as good as he was against Ferencváros. And the reality is that Rovers will sell him at some point. And that playing in games like that at the age of 17 will raise his value.
Yeah, and puts him in the shop window as well, in a way that domestic games just won't. I'm interested to listen to Brian Kerr on Virgin Media after the game last night, and he was talking about how Rovers looked a bit more stable defensively almost than they had done in the League of Ireland. I don't think he was talking, to be fair, about what you're saying there in relation to the last 10 minutes or so, where it was a bit sort of backs to the wall. And Damon Delaney mentioned that point about the players coming through and building up that level of European experience and how that'll grow and grow. What's seeing what you saw last night, and obviously they've Ghent and Molde to come, can they get out of that group now?
I still think it's going to be probably beyond them, but they're going to give themselves a chance. They won't be that far off, I don't think. Djurgården were the bottom seeds, so you might think, if you're going to get out of the group, do you need to be beating the bottom seeds at home? But it's actually a pretty egalitarian group, really. Ghent are not the strongest top seeds that they might have gotten. They might have gotten West Ham or Fiorentina or Villarreal. But Molde are really strong second seeds. They were in the Europa League with Dundalk a couple of seasons ago. Stephen Bradley has rated Molde as the favourites to top the group, because they're ahead of Bodo Glimt in their domestic league in Bode Glimt. We've seen Hammer Roma and Drove
They're
PSV
flying
last
at the
night.
minute.
Yeah,
Bode
they're really
Glimt,
good.
yeah.
So I still think it might be a little bit beyond them. If like honestly, if Byrne could be fit to start every game, you'd give them a chance. And they'll be hard to beat. You know, they have adjusted. They're much harder to break down than they were in Europe. You go back to last year and they were just too open against Flora Tallinn. They're too open in away games, particularly the game against Ferencváros, first half against Ludogorets. So they have adjusted. Are they slightly more defensive? They probably are. I mean, Dylan Watts played last night as well. He's a forward-thinking midfielder, but he's a midfielder, unlike Byrne or Burke or Rory Gaffney. So they have become more difficult to break down. That's not to say they don't pass the ball pretty well. They do. I think one of their problems in the first half was they passed the ball pretty well to get control of the game and just lacked a bit of penetration in the final third. They're going along to Aaron Green a lot. And it worked early in the second half, but it didn't really work in the first half. And in fairness, there wasn't a whole lot of space behind Djurgården in the first half when Rovers did have the ball. So I still think that it might be a little bit beyond them to get out of the group. But you know, I wouldn't be shocked if they do it. You know, I mean, that last night was a game. It was kind of a curious enough game to try and, you know, what's the angle to the report here? Because like, there's not obvious. Like, it's one of those games like either side could have won it. Maybe neither side should really. But Rovers are not going to be generous opponents in this group. And I think that, you know, some across Europe will look at the League of Ireland side and say, okay, they're in the third pot. They're exactly who we want. But I think when teams are doing their due diligence on Rovers and they realise that particularly their home record, they realise that actually they're not an easy draw at all.
And they did have the chances last night, like that chance you were talking about, it went over the top and the goalkeeper did so well to come out, and his body position, he just did really well, I thought. If he had stayed in the goal, it might have been a different case, but they had the chances, so it could have been different.
Absolutely. And obviously Dylan Watts had a good snapshot in the second half in the box after a really good run down the right by Neil Farrugia. That was a really good save. A couple of others from set pieces and the Dylan Watts shot from the edge of the box. I think for all the nerds out there, I think the XG was pretty even. But I'm sure Djurgården didn't really have too many clear-cut chances that they wasted. Like Alan Manis wasn't throwing himself left and right to kind of to single-handedly claw them away. There was a great chance in the first half when Dan Cleary stumbled over the ball. He kind of almost fell in slow motion, and their striker had a guy running to his right, just inexplicably didn't pass to him, and then inexplicably shot from about 30 yards. He could have taken it so much closer to goal. That's right. It was easy for Manis. So that was their big chance, but other than that, I think Rovers definitely didn't deserve to lose the game. I wouldn't be so sure they deserved to win either. And
you think that Stephen Bradley was not, he thought they should have won? I was just watching him after the game, just on the pitch and going up to the fans and that, and he seemed pretty happy, in good spirits. I know obviously getting a draw is a good result, but did you feel that he was happy with that, or they should have won? I think so, yeah. There were times when he was quite a frustrated figure on the touchline, particularly at the start. I mean, Djurgården didn't really go at them for the first few minutes, and Bradley used his phrase afterwards that our passing was too negative, which I wasn't sure what that was. I think maybe that's just hitting it too long or just giving it away too easily. And at the end, he was a bit frustrated because Rovers were kind of out of the game. Like Djurgårdens were kind of by far the dominant side near the end, and Rovers were struggling to keep possession really, and there were kind of parts where the press was a little bit misaligned, and that's natural. Like, I mean, players who played 90 minutes, it's a tiring game, you know. It's tough physically, but it's tough mentally as well to constantly stay concentrated for a full game like that. So and they were carrying knocks at the end as well. Like Sean Gannon tweaked his knee and had to play 90 minutes regardless. I don't think it's too bad, but obviously Rovers had another sub and not used them by the point that Gannon got injured. I think he might have come off. Yeah, I thought he was gone, and then I saw him reappear again. It was like, what happened there? That Green chance, like 99 times out of 100, the keeper cleans him out, and it's a penalty. He did so well. Watching the replay, I was like, no, he's going to get him this time. I couldn't believe it. I was wondering, did he need to go around the goalkeeper? Could he have taken the shot with his right? Yeah. Or could he gone a bit closer to the keeper and take the contact? And because like the referee is going to blow that up all day because it was so maybe. Keeper. I thought the keeper did well to kind of, you know, he showed him down the line. Yeah, without fouling him. I think he just got a touch. It was just too much on it. Yeah. Yeah, and at that point he might have thought the goalkeeper will take me out here. We'll get the penalty. It was a good chance. The Sun aren't alone in reporting this morning. We can receive you at the Aviva. This is obviously on the back of potentially game cancellations in
in Britain? Are we getting games next week?
Don't know. Remains to be seen. We don't know what's happening with those Champions League games. I know there was a UEFA figure at the game last night who was saying that there may be a chance that the European games, don't go ahead in England next midweek, and they may be moved to a neutral venue. So naturally, the Aviva would be an option. Whether it's likely to happen, I'm not sure. It seems like an enormous, policing and logistical requirement on behalf of the Irish authorities to agree to a game to host like Liverpool or Man City in a massive European game at a few days' notice. So I don't know. Remains to be seen. Also remains to be seen if those games will be played at neutral venue. They just don't know. We'll find clarity on that later this week, and we'll find clarity on this weekend's games later today.
We can do 17 nights Gareth Brooks at Croke Park.
Oh, he's on about Gareth Brooks.
Something like that. You're heading down later on, yeah?
No, I'm not. No, I'm away on holidays tomorrow morning. So
I love the way it's like it's just not credible to be. I'm not. You're not going. Accept
You're
that,
just hiding it, Adrian.
It's not credible. Enjoy the holidays. Thanks a million for coming in.
Cheers, Adrian.
Gavin Cooney, the 42, reflecting on events in Tala last night. It's 8:15. OTB AM brought to you live each morning by Gillette Labs for an effortless finish to your day. And after the break, we're going to be joined by football writer Daniel Harris, reflecting on Manchester United's limp display last night against Real Sociedad. We're back after these.
All good?
Right, we're back. That was the quickest ad break of all time. We will be lining up Daniel Harris very shortly. Is that what we're doing? Is Daniel Harris coming on? He'll be on in a minute. Comes frantically getting stuff together outside, and there's the legs are kicking hard outside. Aisling.
That's all good. All good.
Will be the swans in here. Daniel Harris is ready to go. Good morning to you, Daniel.
Hello.
Thanks for jumping on there when our technical issues kicked in, so fair play. Listen, we want to obviously have a bit of a chat about the match last night and general events as to what happens to football now over the next few days. Was there a chance last night that the game didn't go ahead, do you think? Did it come close?
I don't know. I mean, they talked about the fact that UEFA decided it should be played because it was just too late to cancel it. You've obviously got people there from San Sebastian who've come for the game. But otherwise, it wouldn't have made a lot of sense to cancel the game because, I mean, it just, I don't totally get it. But why you would cancel the game in that life, I feel like, generally, like life needs to continue through death. I don't know.
Yeah. Does that mean you feel similarly about the games for the next couple of weeks?
Yeah. I guess like the kind of forced mourning isn't something that particularly agrees with me. If people have got to go to work, then they should be allowed to have things that aren't work. And do I think, even if we look at it from this way, do I think the Queen would care if the football went ahead? No, not really. And it feels like perhaps society has moved on slightly from when these rules were first discussed. But now, yeah, if people are going to work, then they should be allowed their recreation, I think.
Yeah, like it almost gets overtaken by, her wishes would be overtaken by protocol, which is the most sort of royal thing possibly of all time. But
yeah, I mean that's how this kind of thing works, really, isn't it? Where no one is exactly directly answerable for why these things happen because it's monarchy. And that's how monarchy works.
And like one last point on it, the opportunity, and I don't mind saying, we were saying earlier on that like from a selfish point of view, we just want to see some football over the next while, and we're a little bit detached from it, of course, over here as well. But the opportunity to use sport in the way that it's been used a lot, particularly over the last few years, to have that sort of outpouring of grief and respect for the head of state that has passed.
I don't know, because I feel people respond to these things differently. So I think I'm sure that there are people who go to the football who would appreciate it in that aspect, but equally I'm sure that there are as many people, maybe more, who just would like the football to continue because it's part of their routine. And I guess for some people it's hard to treat the death of someone who had nothing to do with them in the way that society feels it needs to treat the death to keep social cohesion going and to keep the kind of the imagined community of the nation going, because that imagined community is a phrase used by Benedict Anderson, where what he talked about was you have these communities of nations, and people feel communal with people that they never meet or never will meet. So the notion of the existence of the community is imagined, and that's the kind of way that the royal family operates, and lots of other things operate as well, that politics operates, that lots of national symbolism operates too, in that it enables people to feel part of something. But then I guess football does that too. And whether or not you feel a particular way about the Queen, I don't know whether cancelling the things that people do to feel better about their lives is the best way of marking that historical page turning.
Yeah, there's definitely a celebrity culture aspect to that for sure. On much more basic terms, Daniel, did Erik ten Hag make a mistake with his team selection last night?
I don't think so, in that he needed to give the other players a game. He needed to give the other players who played a chance. I guess you might look at it and think, well, if Bruno and Eriksen played a half each, maybe they should have played the same half. Maybe you just play them both in the first half, take them off whatever happens, because you've got a better chance of building a lead. Because I think what happened was Eriksen helps United control games and Bruno helps United win games. I mean, that's not a perfect distinction, obviously, but it meant that they controlled it quite nicely in the first half when they had Eriksen. But once Bruno came on, they were less able to get him the ball in good areas because Eriksen had gone off. So perhaps he might have done it that way. But I think one thing we saw is why the first 11 is the first 11. Although I would say in parentheses after that the fringe players who came in, obviously it's much easier for them if you bring in one or two while the rest of the first team are playing, then you change almost everyone and expect to get a performance out of them, because that tends not to happen in general.
The crap player saying, "Oh, why did you start me with these other crap players?"
Yeah, exactly. I think, we saw why, for example, Casemiro hasn't featured yet, really. Like, he looked a way off it. He's actually been okay when he's come off the bench, but he looked like there's work to do for him physically and probably mentally as well, to adjust to all the new things that are there for him, because he didn't play well last night, and you can see why Scott McTominay is playing and didn't come on last night, because I guess he's the one who in that position Ten Hag is currently happy with. But as for the others, I mean, Anthony needed another game, so it's good he got one. He showed some flashes, but the rest of them didn't really stake any kind of claim. Although, again, as you say, like, the crap players complaining that they're playing with other crap players does obviously make a difference, that Ronaldo's got Anthony Elanga outside him rather than Marcus Rashford or whatever, or Anthony, who isn't fit yet. But at the same time, you need those players to step up at some point, because you're going to need them in the season. So I understand why Ten Hag picked that team, but some Europa League groups United have got in the last few seasons, and you've thought, well, it's almost impossible not to qualify from this group. But this one, actually, obviously they lost last night. You could easily see a team going to Moldova and getting a draw or getting beat. And then at that point, you only qualify automatically if you win the group. Otherwise, you've got to play a team from the Champions League. So, yeah, you never know. You might get United Liverpool for a place in the Europa League in a few weeks.
Well, you mentioned Ronaldo. What was your sense like? In some ways, it was a classic neo or latter-day Ronaldo performance, whatever you want to describe it, in that, like, it was a lot of arm throwing and a lot of sort of upset with people around him and not a lot of work. Still could have had 2 or 3 goals. Is your sense, I'm sort of reading between what you're saying there, that looking at Ronaldo and Maguire and Fred last night, maybe to select those ones, they almost confirmed, it seemed like, what it seems Erik ten Hag has thought about them. But is your sense that actually there could be life in Ronaldo in a better team?
I thought he played quite well when he came on against Leicester, and I thought he did well when he came on against Arsenal, because I think perhaps with Ronaldo now, he might be quite useful when opposition teams are tiring, because he's got a lot of goal scorers now, and he's generally got a lot of footballing now, so he understands where to be. But physically, he struggles against defenders who are quick. I mean, we saw that opportunity. It ended up being offside, where he picked up a back pass, and he was able to head for goal. And he knew that he didn't have the pace to beat the last defender, so he had to basically check back inside. And as someone who, I can't believe I'm about to do this, about to compare myself to Ronaldo as a footballer, but as someone
we're here for it.
As someone who played centre forward and doesn't have any pace or any change of pace, I knew that if I got past the last defender, I had to hit it. Because if you get past the last defender and you don't hit it, you'll have to start beating them again. And then you're opening up a whole world of trouble because other defenders are coming back and you're getting surrounded. And that was just, it felt almost like he hadn't adjusted to not being quick anymore. Because then it happened again in the second half where he had an opportunity where he took a touch and he had to hit it. Because otherwise you haven't got the gas to get away from the defender, whether it's over 5 yards or in that first yard to half yard. And he has to, I think, adjust his game if he wants to score goals, because you just have to get the ball out your feet and hit it. Another player like that is Harry Kane, who's at his peak more or less, but he doesn't have acceleration to get away from a quick defender. And what I think when I watch Harry Kane play and when I think about Harry Kane, the thing that I always find most brilliant about him is, I would say, from 15 to 22 yards, he might be the best finisher I've ever seen. And what he does is he takes a touch, or he might not even take a touch, he gets it out his feet, and he hits it early and before the keeper's able to set himself, and he's accurate. And that is how you see Harry Kane score a lot of his goals. And I think one of the reasons he scores so many goals like that is that he knows he doesn't have the pace to get away from a quick defender. Cavani last season doesn't have it either. What we see with Cavani, and I think I may have come on the show and compared myself to him as well. I was a multifaceted player, let me tell you. But what he would do is, you see Cavani always try and chip the keeper. And the reason he tried and chip the keeper wasn't for the swag or because it looks cool, although it does. It was because he knew that he didn't have the pace to get away from a quick defender with recovery pace. And that's an adjustment I think that perhaps Ronaldo needs to make. But yeah, if you saw him playing with better players, he'd be better. If you saw him playing against more tired defenders, he'd be better as well. But also, Sociedad, they're not mugs, and they did a pretty good job. They got lucky with the penalty, fair enough, but they did a pretty good job of shutting United down. Because although United, as we said, played players who haven't been playing much, the players who played, they're not total donkeys. They're not as good as the first set of players. And Sociedad did a pretty good job, particularly in the second half, of attacking the space and keeping the ball out their danger areas, such that United created almost nothing.
And just when you're speaking on Harry Kane there, and he's adjusted his game, and that's how he's still playing so well and it's working for him. And then Ronaldo at the moment, he hasn't really adjusted his game, and you wonder where he fits in. Like, do you think he'd be okay to be this impact sub? Is he okay with that?
Well, he'd be okay with that. He's going to have to be, because he's behind at least two players for that centre forward position. But I think Harry Kane, it's not so much whether he's adjusted his game, it's that probably he's always had this. Harry Kane wasn't fast when he was in the youth team, or when he was in the reserves, or playing. He wouldn't have been the fastest player, so he would have had to have found a way of getting his goals without the pace to get away from defenders. And perhaps with Ronaldo, it's that he used to have that. If you put Ronaldo clear one-on-one, the defender was not likely to catch him. And it's actually, with Harry Kane, it's probably something that was always the case, so you had to find a solution. Whereas with Ronaldo, it's only latterly the case, and he hasn't found the solution. Having to shoot immediately is not a perfect solution, but it's something of which he should be capable, because he can shoot well from 20 yards. And it's those kind of areas, those sort of mid-distance finishes, where the lack of pace, you have to find a way around the lack of pace. And as with him being an impact sub, that's what's on offer. That unless he plays in a way that demands something better, being an impact sub is all that's available to him. So if he can't get used to it, and if he can't make it work, then he's not going to play. But I was actually, as I said, encouraged by how he did against Leicester and how he did against Tottenham, of his ability to fulfil that role in the squad. I'm sure that he will get games, probably home games against teams United should beat, where they're sitting back, where there's not a lot of space in behind for him to attack, where then you're looking for his ability to sniff a chance in the box. And that's something you never lose. So I would expect him to play in some of those games. But at the moment, Ten Hag is obviously trying to get the team settled, get some momentum going. So that's one of the reasons he's not changing the team. And I guess another reason is the performance you saw last night. And it's the same reason why Rangnick, when Ole was the manager, he basically had one team, 1-11, that he trusted, that he could pick, more or less. And the reason is what you saw last night. And then Rangnick came in, and he constantly trying to find a different blend, try and find a way of not playing Fred and McTominay together in midfield, trying to find the front three that worked. And in the end, he'd keep coming back to the same players, because that didn't work either. Whereas Ten Hag has found something that sort of works. It's not perfect yet, but the players are getting better, and it's working at the moment. So for him to change that is going to require injury, suspension, or someone to seize an opportunity that they're given. And at the moment, that doesn't really look likely.
and from Casemiro's point of view, that he gets a bit of a first start last night. Maybe not the glittering players around him that he would like, or maybe that he's used to. Gets a free pass and things are going to come good. Or what was your thoughts?
No one gets a free pass ever. You're there and you have to perform, and he didn't perform last night. But I wouldn't, in the same way I didn't want to write Ten Hag off after the first 2 games or write Martinez off after the Brentford game. I know that Casemiro is a good player. We all know that Casemiro is a good player with a great mentality. So while it is possible that he came to United for the money, there's a lot more chance, based on what recent history, that United will make him crap than he'll make them crap. And just quickly to go back to Ronaldo, I think that for him, being subbed is actually not bad. If you know that you're going to come on around 60 minutes in every game, then you can focus on that. You can prepare for that. You know that you're going to play, and you know that the opposition are tiring, and then you've got half an hour to give absolutely everything. And being a sub is an important role, whether it's in extending a lead, defending a lead, or trying to win a game. Like that, to me, is an important, specific, and expert role. And at this stage of his career, playing that role in a team that's starting to win and gathering some momentum should be quite a good thing for Ronaldo. And that should be something. I know that these people aren't like that. They're not built like the rest of us. But at some point, that is something that he's going to have to make his peace with or not play. But yeah, Casemiro, I was disappointed in Casemiro last night. I was hoping he was going to play so well that he had to play for United in whenever the next game is. But that turned out not to be the case.
Yes, see, for Ronaldo, I understand completely what you're saying, Daniel, that, you know, it's absolutely so important to maybe finish with your best team, a finisher, someone who can close out the game, to have that impact. But I just don't know, would he accept to be that type of player? That's probably what I'm wondering, is would he be okay to be coming off the bench for that last 30 minutes, 20 minutes, whatever it is? You'd wonder, as you said, they're built differently, you know, they're highly competitive. Would he be okay with that?
I don't know, but he doesn't have options.
Yeah.
He thought he did, and it turned out that he didn't. So ultimately, he's going to have to make his peace with it, because that's all he's getting. I mean, he may maybe try and find a move in January, but there's no particular reason he's getting himself a move in January, unless Chelsea decide that actually they've now got a manager that they can force to have him. But again, that seems unlikely that they would want to start that row with a new manager. So I don't actually think that Ronaldo's got an angle. And I also was thinking about that if this is something he's prepared to accept because it's the best he's getting, and this isn't something I particularly want, but it might give him a way of staying at United and playing at a decent level next season, because I know that it's assumed that Ronaldo is going to leave United next season, but the question will still beg, to where? Who's paying his wages, and who wants to invite his ego into their dressing room if he's going to sulk if he's not playing all the time, and is going to be of a high enough level for him? So if I was Ronaldo, I'd also have that on my mind, that actually, if he wants to carry on playing next season, I'm sure he does, that actually United probably isn't a bad place to be, because it looks like they're going forward, and it looks like he can find himself a decent role, which would not necessarily be available to him at any equivalent club or even a team that are better than United currently. So I don't think anymore it's about what Ronaldo feels, it's about what Ronaldo can get.
One very quick one for you, Daniel, before we let you off, just on Ten Hag's satisfaction or otherwise with last night. So a 1-0 defeat. Some of the players that had been sidelined didn't perform as they might have done, but in some ways would he have been, like, it gives him good clarity now, almost more clarity. He must be some satisfaction with him today when he sits down, where he's like, geez, did I make the right call there with that player, or is that not the right thing? At least he has good clarity almost now about who his first maybe 11 to 13 players are.
Yeah, I mean, he knows the first 11 that we've seen the last couple of games is his first 11. The only change that would be, I guess, perhaps Martial might play instead of Rashford, but Rashford's doing all right at the moment. And the only other one is, I'm sure he wants Casemiro to be in the team instead of McTominay at some point. But we saw last night, it doesn't look like Casemiro is ready for that yet. So yeah, I mean, it's just, as I said, it's the same with the other managers. I mean, it's been clear who the best players at United are for a while. Obviously, the players that he's brought in are excellent and better than the players that they replace. But otherwise, yeah, we know who the best players are, so I'd expect them to start the league games. The problem he has now is that he's under a little bit of pressure in the Europa League, because he does want to stay in that competition, and they will need to start winning some games. So I don't know. There's meant to be a game in Moldova next week. We'll find out if that is actually the case. But I'm pretty sure Ten Hag knows what his first team is for the next game, whenever that is, and also what he wants his first team to be in 3 or 4 weeks.
Good stuff, Daniel. Thanks, million.
Ta-ra.
Daniel Harris on the line there. Nice, thoughtful stuff on all topics. 8:35 almost on this Friday morning. Good morning to you, wherever it is you are at. Loads of comments coming into us about a variety of different things this morning. So whatever on your mind, do fire your thoughts into us. You're watching OTB AM, brought to you live each morning by Gillette Labs for an effortless finish to your day. We'll have Cullen Buig in studio very shortly to discuss something. Actually, I'm not quite sure what it is, but he's the producer of the show, and he's insisted that he's coming in to fill the gap between now and Alan Quinlan coming on. So we'll see. We're in for a treat, no doubt. And a reminder as well that the Premier League is back, and we've teamed up with one of Europe's largest sports events, ticketing and hospitality companies. They're Champions Travel, and giving you the opportunity to win a €250 Champions Travel voucher every day this week, and they can be used on Premier League match trips as well as a host of other sporting events. Probably don't book it right now. Just a bit of clarity maybe later on today. Daily winners also going to be entered into our grand prize draw, where one lucky winner is going to win a trip from a selection of Premier League games with flights and 2 nights accommodation included. And to enter, just tell us who's this iconic former England winger running through his schedule that prevented him coming on the show this morning.
7 o'clock Emmenel, 8 o'clock EastEnders, 8:30 if Holby City's not on.
I thought the line earlier was a bit funny. Here we go again.
7 o'clock Emmenel, 8 o'clock EastEnders, 8:30 if Holby City's not on.
Right, send us in your guess to the main Twitter account at Off The Ball, and we'll have a winner for you a little bit later in the day. We're back with Cullen Buig in studio after these.
OTB AM. This is OTB Sports Radio.
Off the Ball.
You'll get more YouTube moments out of Anthony. They really rated him highly. We saw that in the first half at Old Trafford. He didn't need to be flicking his legs left, right. But it's football, it's entertainment, it's sport. I was in the main stand and people were clapping and laughing, and the Arsenal fans were furious, and great, you can have a bit of that.
Subscribe now to the OTB Football Podcast stream wherever you get your podcasts, and download the OTB Sports app.
If your business relies on a van, that wouldn't sound good. But this does. Get up to 75% off van insurance. Now available in FBD branches nationwide. FBD Insurance. Support. It's what we do. 75% no claims discount based on 5 years claims free. Available on new van policies used for farm or business purposes. Terms and conditions apply. Underwritten by FBD Insurance plc. FBD Insurance Group Limited, trading as FBD Insurance, is regulated by the Central Bank of Ireland.
Celebrate European Week of Sport this September at the Be Active Festival. An action-packed day out for the whole family at Sport Ireland Campus, Blanchardstown. Come and try new sports, fitness challenges and skill tests at Ireland's biggest sporting festival. Meet sporting legends. Check out the Inflatable Zone, Village Food Market and much more. There's something for everyone at the Be Active Festival. Saturday, September 24th at Sport Ireland Campus, Blanchardstown. Book your tickets now at beactivefestival.ie.
OTB AM.
With Gillette. Get into your flow with the new Gillette Labs Razor with exfoliating bar.
Quinlan.
Just welcome back to our live production meeting here. I don't really know what's happening, but Colm is in studio and he's got a microphone on him, as you've heard. So he's going to tell us what to do after we get to the end of the slot that he's in for. And we also haven't actually have no idea what that's about.
No, that's fine, because I just realised, I've been away for the week.
Yeah.
And there's probably been a dearth of US Open talk.
Hasn't been actually some really great
probably been a dearth of it, really. So I was coming in this morning.
Jenny Taffy was in during the weekend. She said some great light.
She's a really tactical
our other contributors
insight.
Just don't seem to be able to hit.
Well, I give something different today. And then I was coming in this morning, and then Emma Carroll was saying, we haven't done enough US Open. I'll rectify that. So here we are. Have you been watching it?
No.
Have you been watching it?
A little bit, not overly a lot now. I was away in Slovakia.
Oh yeah,
it's
8:38.
That's good. Well, here, listen. Well, let's talk about United first of all. Then, just
can I just say one thing about the US Open?
Producer,
you see, it's a very difficult tournament to follow in Ireland, especially when you're on this shift.
Yeah.
So actually, every morning you wake up, it's kind of like that Christmas Day feeling, is like what's happened overnight. And I have to say, I was absolutely furious with Nick Kyrgios because he's blown it. I mean, he's really blown it. Like Wimbledon, people thought that was his chance. That was his only time he'll ever get to a Grand Slam final, which I did firmly believe. I never thought he'd get to a Grand Slam final. But like, there's no shame in losing to Novak Djokovic. And he won the first set off him. And actually, up to that point, Djokovic had never taken a set off Kyrgios ever. Now, they hadn't played since 2017. But when the start of that second set, it was like, oh my God, Kyrgios is 2 sets away from winning a Grand Slam and winning Wimbledon. So I thought, well, that's probably the zenith of his career. But like in terms of like no Djokovic, Nadal was knocked out by Francis Tiafoe, no Roger Federer, Daniil Medvedev, Kyrgios knocked him out, and then he plays Karen Khachanov, the Russian, who was a decent player but nothing special, like nobody that should be beating Kyrgios, and it goes to 5, and Khachanov breaks him in the first game of the final set after Kyrgios played a brilliant fourth set tiebreak. And you're just saying, I've followed him for a long time, and he's all the talent in the world, which everybody knows about, and he has a lot of negative traits to his personality, which some of the stuff is indefensible, but there is something I find about him very magnetic as a sports person, and I love watching him play.
But he's not in the John McEnroe mould of somebody that you can actually, he doesn't have an awful lot of like traits to his personality that you get drawn to. He just seems like I don't want to draw a whole veil over the guy, because I don't have the first idea what he's about, other than just everything I see about him. He just doesn't come across like a very nice individual.
Well, it's not so much about being nice, it's about being captivating as a sports person. I'm not saying I want to go for a pint with the guy. I am saying I'm interested in what he has to say, and I find his press conferences intriguing, because a lot of these meetings can be quite bland across all sports, and you are looking for, especially when you're in the media, you are looking for...
Well, you don't have to be either bland or an asshole. Like there's...
No, absolutely, and there's definitely a common ground where charm would be great or something like that. But there is something about Kyrgios that you do listen to, and I think most people do. Now, a lot of people can't stand the sight of him, and that's fair enough too. And like his reaction when he did lose to Khachanov, breaking 2 rackets on court,
stop.
like
So
that's absolutely disrespectful to the winner of the match.
Absolutely,
he had no problem
and is
with
that
Khachanov.
behaviour probably having an effect for him going on and doing great things? I often think sometimes in those outbursts and controlling all of that is a massive aspect of like this high intensity game. You have to be able to control all that to maybe go on and to be able to get these big wins. Is that a reason that it's not happening for him?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think he can control his temper sometimes, but I think that it's his responsibility to try his best to do so, because nobody else really does what he does at that level of the game. Like there are players like Benoit Paire, the French player, again very talented, but like basically often throws a lot of matches. Like the first round this year at the US Open, didn't try, or leading into the US Open, actually, sorry, warm-up tournament, and he does that every so often. But when you're playing at that level of the game, like it's so rare, it's basically non-existent. Like Kyrgios is seed at 23, he is actually a seed in this Grand Slam, which he rarely is. And he got to Wimbledon final. Like he should be beyond all this. Like it's teenage stuff. Like it's very immature. But at the same time, that's not why you tune in for him. But I guess with him, it's like, well, what you see is what you get. But I think he's just not strongly reprimanded enough by umpires during matches, and I think they're a bit afraid of him.
Obviously, that
he would say the opposite. He would say he's victimised. But I think there's bullying tactics going on. So there's a lot about his personality that I'd be very unsure about, but there is something about him as a tennis player that I find so interesting.
I think that says a lot more about you, Colm, than it does about
explain
him.
that. I'd love to hear this.
No, but just that you're drawn to this personality that most people think is...
No, I think he's like... if he's a subject of a documentary, I would absolutely watch it. I think that's why
there's been documentaries about several characters, and I was going to name one there, but I'll hold off on that. Who aren't particularly nice, that you would watch the documentary. It doesn't mean that you have to. I saw one of his comments afterwards where he was like, "Oh, I'm just so disappointed for everybody I've let down, all my fans."
But you're doing it constantly.
And I also thought, like, all your fans, is he like?
Oh yeah.
Why have fans now?
Yeah, well, you seem to be leading the posse here.
Not necessarily. I'm just saying that I find him an interesting character, and it's a shame for him that he blew this opportunity, because now he has to wait till the Australian Open in January, and who knows what his motivation levels will be like then.
He has to wait until then to smash a few rackets and bow out.
Rackets, yeah. But look, Carlos Alcaraz and Jannik Sinner took the tournament by storm the other night, playing a 5.25 hour match. There was one shot that Alcaraz played behind his back. He was running and he hit his power forehand behind his back as he was running, and he won the points.
I saw that. What was going on there?
God, that's unbelievable. But still,
I haven't seen any French. I'm all over. Or US Open.
Well, I mean, that's nicely clipped for you to watch. It is, on Twitter.
I thought it was one of these. The way you get fed these. Like I seem to get like an awful and too much tennis clips in my TikTok.
Do you?
I don't know why it happens.
In TikTok?
Yeah,
it's your algorithm.
Well, it's supposed to know me, but it doesn't.
So that means everything I send you do watch. And then your phone.
It's all column. It's all the stuff the columns.
That's good. It's great.
I just didn't understand what he was doing. Like, why would you do that?
Why would you hit a shot back?
Well, hit the shot and then turn your back on it.
No,
it wasn't even a great shot.
No, did you see the same shot that I saw?
Yeah, he hit it and then he turned around.
No, he was running. He was covering his right side. He was running across court. And Sinner was like, well, you're running that way, so I'm going to hit it behind you.
So it's the only way you could do it.
So that was the only, I mean, that's exactly it. That was the only way. He improvised and he created gold as a result, content, We live in a content-driven world. That clip had like 1 million views when I woke up to it, and that's the one that you saw. And you know, if we can gather more tennis fans as a result, that's great.
How many
And
views
we're happy to have you.
How many views did Kyrgios, the rackets breaking?
I don't know, but I'd say it's 7 figures at this stage, or
Yeah,
maybe late
see?
6 figures. I know, yeah, it's absolutely true. You know, and you know what the cliche would be about Kyrgios? To be like, oh, well, if you took that out of his game, he wouldn't be the same player. But like, I actually fundamentally believe that he'd be a better player again if he just stopped all that. And sometimes, like against Medvedev, he didn't say a word. The odd bit to his box. That's about it. So if he concentrates, he's a great player. But look, there's more to tennis than Nick Kyrgios. It was just that him losing this week, I thought was he's really lost his chance here. Now we do have a great women's final set up. Iga Swiatek, seeded number 1, into her first non-French Open final of a Grand Slam against Ons Jabeur, who lost the Wimbledon final. That'll be good. What are you laughing at?
It's a good matchup.
His enthusiasm for this sport. It's like you're into it in a way that so few people are. It's so
well, it's sport. That's what we're here for, isn't it?
Are we done?
Well,
no, tell us about the women's one.
Yeah.
Iga Swiatek, brilliant. What a player.
Yeah. Well, look, she won the French Open twice, and she was the dominant player of 2022 until she lost at Wimbledon. And then people thought, well, she's going to be unbeaten. Like, there's nobody to touch her. Showed a bit of vulnerability with that defeat, and actually hasn't been great at this US Open, and just beat Aryna Sabalenka in the semi-final in 3 sets. And she's playing finally very well. And it would be great to see her win something that's not the French Open, so people can say, well, she's an all-around game. Because often it's labelled, especially at clay court, that, like Rafa Nadal in his early career, was that, well, you're a specialist on clay, can you do it elsewhere? Then he proved that at the other Grand Slams, and I hope that Swiatek does that, because the women's game does need a dominant figure. There are 20 to 30 candidates all the time to win Grand Slams, but it looks like Swiatek has the will to stay in the game for as long as possible, and she certainly has the talent. And then Ons Jabeur, she's probably playing the most popular player, I'd say both codes in the men's and women's. She's the Minister for Happiness, is what she's known as around the tour, because she brings such good vibes to everybody.
Yourself,
like yourself. I was going to say it about you, but you said it about me. That's great. A great way to end this slot.
What's your favourite thing to say, Colm? Happy Friday.
Do you say that?
We should do more of this.
Do you say Happy Friday? Do you say Happy Friday?
Emma, whenever you've got ideas about tennis in future, will you just give?
I have Alan Quinlan there waiting in the box.
Listen, it's great to have you back. Thanks a million for that.
Thanks for having me on.
That'll do the business for us now. Later on today, it's quarter to 9. It is handy, in fairness, having the producer in the studio for other reasons. 8:45, you're watching OTB AM, brought to you live each morning by Gillette Labs for an effortless finish to your day. We're going to be live in studio next. Alan Quinlan and first of all, John Giles, last night's show, talking about the genius of Erling Haaland.
I fear we may get sick talking about the brilliance of Erling Haaland between now and the end of the season. A couple more goals in the Champions League during the week. 12 goals in 8 matches for Manchester City. On a scale of 1 to Jimmy Greaves, just how good is he?
Well, he's different. It's very seldom you get great players the same. Dennis Law was different to Jimmy Greaves. But Greaves was a genius at what he did. He scored his goals differently to Haaland. Haaland is a big lad, very quick, reads it well, he's in there, probably works a bit harder when he doesn't have the ball to Jimmy Greaves. But Jimmy Greaves, anybody you could live with, Nathan, he was a genius. You see the amount of goals he scored at a time when the pitches were bad and all that. So great goal scorer. Dennis Law was a great player as well, different. Haaland is different. They're all different in their own ways. But what's great about him, what is he, about 6'5"?
6'5", yeah.
Right? His balance is brilliant. He's quick as lightning. He gets in the box. He gets in at the areas where we've seen him, where De Bruyne a couple of matches now hit a terrific ball. He was there, almost on the goal line, but in. So he has that knack, if you call it a knack, that great players have for scoring goals. You won't see him in the game much, As I used to say that about Jimmy, all he does is score goals.
Yeah.
Jimmy Greaves.
What else do you want from him?
The most important thing on the game, and I must be honest now, in Ronaldo, when I saw Ronaldo at Manchester United, I thought he was a lazy devil.
Yeah.
He wasn't getting back in that. But then obviously I changed my mind because he was scoring goals left, right, and centre wherever he went. But Haaland is different, but they're all different. As I say, in my time it was Law and Greaves were the main goal scorers. Totally different.
That's John Giles. You can check out the full piece up on our YouTube channel. He was in conversation with Richie with Nathan on the show last night. It is 10 to 9. You're watching OTB AM. We've still Dominic Fifield to come from The Athletic. He's going to talk to us all things Chelsea. Such interesting times there, obviously, with one man out and another man in, and plenty of comings and goings on the pitch as well. So we'll get to that in just a little bit. But for the first time in about 3 years, I think, Alan Quinlan is in studio. Good morning to you, Quinny.
Morning, Adrian and Ashleen. I was here over the summer.
Oh, were you?
After the New Zealand tour.
I wasn't.
Yeah, I was here.
Well, good to see you.
Yeah, you too.
How's life?
Good, thanks. Yeah, good.
Oh, good. You've been sort of mulling over. You've taken the summer to mull over the best 15 that you've ever played against over the course of your career. So we're going to come to that.
It's a no-win situation.
It is absolutely no. And I've been looking at it last night and I was like, oh, how could he let him out? But we'll get to that in a minute. There was a couple of things I just wanted to ask you about. First of all, the Lawrence Dallaglio comments yesterday. I don't know if you saw them, but he was talking about the balance of power shift from the southern hemisphere to the northern hemisphere in the context of the World Cup. He said at no point since New Zealand won in '87 have the hemispheres been as close as they are now. Talks about the top four in the world rankings been from the northern hemisphere up to very recently, and he says there's been a genuine shift in the balance of power. France, Ireland and possibly England have a good a chance as they had in any previous year, as he's talking about winning the World Cup. So the overall point being that the northern hemisphere is now stronger than the southern hemisphere.
I think the world rankings sometimes can be a bit skewed. We've experienced that in 2018, didn't we? And it can change very, very quickly. You know, a couple of results, even November will dictate a lot of that. South Africa are coming here, New Zealand, Australia, and they're playing a lot of tough games. We've only 3 games, the Irish team, but England are playing 4, Scotland are playing 4, Wales are playing 4, and I think it's how the Southern Hemisphere kind of react to them. They're quite difficult games for them. You think Australia have to play France, and are they going to win there? New Zealand coming playing England. England will be rubbing their hands together thinking Twickenham again, and it's difficult for New Zealand because they're inconsistency. But has the gap closed? Probably. I think what I think the difference for me with the Northern Hemisphere teams is, and look, I can probably speak stronger on it being there in New Zealand for Ireland, and the New Zealand situation, I think, and we've probably seen a fair inconsistency from them and probably a lack of patience around their attack when they're used to being pretty dominant against teams and scoring after 3-4 phases. They've probably got to do it a little bit different now and be a bit more patient, particularly when they came up against an Ireland side who were very, very well organised. And you could argue in that first test, they scored, was it 5 tries, 6 tries? But I think 4 or 5 of them were probably preventable and 1 or 2 fortunate, if you know what I mean, which sounds crazy when you're saying something like that. But I think they probably got to adapt a little bit more when they're playing the Northern Hemisphere, because you're coming up against sides who are pretty well organised defensively. And that's probably the difference in the last 20 years that Lawrence is talking about. Every team is good defensively now. You have to be patient, get your fundamentals right, your set piece. South Africa are the team, of course, who on their day can overpower teams and really physically assert themselves. So the gap probably has closed, but I wouldn't be getting too carried away with it. I think you've 9 World Cups, as he said, and 8 have been by the Southern Hemisphere. Yeah. France are probably best placed next year at the World Cup, you would imagine, to have a run. France, New Zealand, Ireland are on a really difficult side of the draw, because if you look at what will happen in the quarterfinals, and I kind of wrote down names here. I think you're thinking, I put down Australia, Argentina in one quarterfinal, Ireland, New Zealand in another.
We take the Quinny.
England, Wales, and France, South Africa, and that's
England, Wales will be a belter of a game.
But England have a quite the way you look at where they're at and the pool they're in. They've got Japan, Argentina, Samoa, and Chile. I think, are they going to be very taxed after that? And then they're on the Wales, Australia.
And Wales at the World Cup, though. I mean,
Argentina's side of the draw. So they're going. Effectively, England are going to play Wales or Australia. Yeah. And you think
you'd probably take Australia at this stage, wouldn't you?
Wales possibly. World Cup yeah, but you think England are in a semi-final there? They're in a situation where they're getting to a semi-final. Probably the best chance we had, and I wouldn't say the easiest, but the best path we had was in 2015. And with all due respect, Argentina can be incredible sometimes. And I go back to 2017 when I was at the World Cup. That was an incredibly strong Argentina side, and they're very dominant against Ireland. But you kind of fancied that side. Maybe 2011 with Wales in that quarter-final. You think maybe that's an easier path through. You're avoiding South Africa, you're avoiding New Zealand, you're avoiding England. But it hasn't happened for Ireland. So they're on a side now where they're going to play. If they come out of the group, because I keep saying this every time I talk about it, you just can't discount Scotland, because they're going to get a lot of motivation out of everybody talking about Ireland and South Africa coming out of that group in Pool B. But look, it's a long time away, Adrian.
It is.
I think and we lived it, didn't we, in 2019? You know, we went into Six Nations after being ranked number 1 in the world Coach of the Year, World Player of the Year, World Team of the Year at the end of 2018, to getting smothered by England in that first Six Nations game, and then it kind of fracturing a little bit, that whole team kind of bond or energy that they had, and it ended up being a very disappointing year. So it can change very quickly, but I do agree with him that it possibly has closed a little bit, but the proof will be in the pudding, because with those November fixtures, you know, I think Australia are a very dangerous side. When you see they've had a lot of injuries and a lot of inconsistencies again, and you see it's hard to judge, isn't it? Argentina beat New Zealand, South Africa get well beaten by Australia, and then it's a role reversal the week after. So it's kind of hard to know where they're all at.
One very quick one before we get into your selection on your best 15. The RFU mooting the idea that they could put players' names on the backs of jerseys. The Nigel Owens gif of it's not soccer, you know, sort of came to mind when that happened, and we've been in contact with the IRFU about it to see any comment about it. It's not something that's on the radar at the minute. Maybe something down the track. So nice sort of loose catch-all there. Have you any sort of moral objection to players' names in the back? I don't
know would I be for it, because I kind of have a feeling that, you know, without being disrespectful to other sports that use the names, I think the thing about getting an international jersey in particular is you kind of don't own it. You earn the right, like you are doing all the international when you play in an international team, and I don't know, initials or something like that would be enough for me if you got your initials or something on it. I just don't know about seeing all the names on the backs of the jerseys and changing from 1 week, because there's a fair few changes in it. And if I was kind of 23rd or 4th man in an Irish squad and kind of chomping to get into that 23, I don't know, does it make any difference around selection, because they can change names very quickly. And it's the sort of thing
that'll probably come in at some point or another, and everybody will just become...
Yeah, like, I'm not totally against it, but I don't know if it needs to happen, you know what I mean? I think the reasoning, and it's been probably the RFU are driving this in England, is more exposure for players. Maybe it's agents behind the scenes that are saying, well, we've a greater chance to market. And look, if it does market the names and the game a bit more, you know, I don't have an issue with it, but I'm just not saying, God, if I was in an Irish squad now, I'd want Quinlan on the back of the jersey when I go out and play. I think everybody knows the team is going to be
nice thing to have, though, in a frame at home.
Yeah, that would be pretty cool.
But you get jerseys and you get your name on them, and you get different sorts of presentations, and you know, you get the cap and all that. So but look, I'm not totally against it, but I'm not sure it's something I'd be pushing for.
And it has been something that was done before. Wales did it, didn't they?
Did they a few years ago? Yeah.
Yeah, I thought I had seen that online, that they had done it. I think it was maybe 2008 around then that they had the names on. I wonder why it didn't continue though.
Maybe
I don't know.
It was something.
Sounds about right for Wales. It's like cheapening the jersey. Right, let's get into it. Your best 15 that you've played against through your career, Quinny, and. We'll start the backs. Let's get going with the backs first, and we can move from there. Do you want to kick us off at full back?
Yeah, I wanted to stay away from Irish players, because I just didn't. I don't want to be meeting fellas say, look.
What you mean is you wanted to stay away from Leinster players because you didn't play against. Well, you didn't play against.
I played with them club games.
Get out of it. You couldn't. We wouldn't.
No, look. I think if you're picking a team that you played against, you're trying to pick guys at the peak of their power. I think that's. I was kind of thinking How do I pick the players here, because there's a scatter of unbelievable players that you could go from, Full-back was one area that I kind of struggled to kind of find real standouts, a number of them. Obviously the standout the player I picked was Rob Kearney, because I played against him a lot. I played with him, and just given the period of time that he played, I think he was the best in the business. You know, I got picked on the Lions tour in 2009, and he was picked, and I remember obviously I didn't go, but afterwards watching his performances in those test matches, and he got picked again in 13. So the proof is in the pudding that he was right up at the top of probably the best in the world at that time.
Played against Mills Mullaina in your last game for Ireland.
Yeah, incredible
he's
player.
He's in a say with another
player.
one that would be in the mix.
Yeah, for sure. But I think probably because I played a bit more. I remember playing against Percy Montgomery. He was incredibly dominant for South Africa. Liam Williams, at the start of his career, he played full back. Probably was a bit unknown when at the very start when Munster played the Scarlets. I didn't play against him internationally. Maxime Maynard, he came to mind. You want to try and pick guys who you remember come to your mind without actually having to go Googling and too much research. Is that a little bit unfair sometimes? But
well, it's some compliment.
Any of the players you mentioned there at full back,
you could go with any of them.
Anybody could pick them, you know.
Give us your two wing positions.
Again, people who just came to mind were you know, Jason Robinson. I haven't played against him a number of times. I just thought he was incredible.
Pace, people forget the pace. Off the chart.
The transition from rugby league over, and I think he was very powerful and physical for not the biggest guy.
Yeah.
He was a poacher on the ground, and look, his talent was incredible. And even as under the high ball, you think at the start people were thinking, well, we kicked the ball high to him, but he was actually really good in the air, and he played full back for England a number of times as well. The other wing, I think, is self-explanatory, isn't it? I got one of his shoelaces in 2002 in Auckland, having coming off the bench, and he was incredible. Sure, he was a iconic figure in the game, and sadly not around now. But I think there isn't too many arguments with picking John Olomu on the other wing.
So you played against him once, was it?
I think it was twice. But just I think being on the field alone with him was. I think you'd be a bit pretty nervous. And someone said to me, I actually was chatting to someone last night, and they said to me, would he make the same impact in the modern game? Probably not the same kind of running out over people, because technically and physically players are stronger nowadays than when you think back to that World Cup in '95 when he was running out over players, and the impact he made. Because we probably saw a very similar type player in Julian Savea, who in the last number of years that he played for New Zealand, and the impact he had. So
was there chatter about him, Quinny? Because I was listening to, I want to say Will Carling, but that seems to be as if those areas cross. One of those sort of old school England players for sure, in the World Cup, talking about seeing him, so they were prepared for him and they were chatting away about him in advance of the game, and then they came out in the tunnel and he was like, holy shit, what are we going to do with this guy? Was there the same sense of it in the Irish setup that time, or what was the conversation?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, I remember Gary Longwell made a tackle on him, the Irish second row from Ulster, and it was a brilliant tackle, and I went, God, maybe he can tackle this guy in that first test in Dunedin in 2002, and a lot of the Irish players did. He didn't have that impact that he would have had. I think from 95 to around 99, that World Cup, that's when he did all the damage, and people didn't know how to defend him. Obviously the South Africans in the final, and James Small was right up in his face and stopping the acceleration and him getting going. But of course there is. But I think, and again, he was so unfortunate that we didn't see a run of 10 years out of John Olomu with his illness and stuff like that. But incredible player in his time.
The midfield feels like probably the best midfield of all time, including every midfield player who's ever played the game.
Well, it's hard to kind of it's unfair to compare the amateur era because physically and technically the players are bigger, they're professionals, they have time to work on the game. Could you have taken some from the amateurs? Could Mike Gibson have had the same effect? Brendan Mullen was an incredible Irish international as well and achieved so much. Would they have been different and better and physically stronger? Of course they would have, but picking Anu and Brian O'Driscoll, I don't think, again, of course you can debate it. I could have put a couple of other centres in there. And
what was it like playing against, because you would have known Brian obviously so well from being in camp and known him about the place and stuff. What was it like coming up against him again? Like almost that same question about how much chat was about him, because he was such a standout, world-class, inarguable player in the conversation for World Player of the Year every year. What would the conversation be in the Munster camp about dealing with him in the week of a game?
Just not giving him space, and I think trying to make sure that you had, you were on the money and switched on. When a player of his ability and calibre, he wasn't a player that feared, like I always thought when people say who did you have a fear against when you played, fear is about physically being fearful first. I think it's like encountering someone up a dark laneway. Like, is it a physical fear or is it and I kind of thought that way in rugby, like who do you fear is going to hurt you here physically when you go to tackle them, things like that. So most of the backs there, although Nanu was a bit different, but Drico was incredibly powerful and just really quick, intelligent, and as I said, he could do things that other players couldn't do. His lines of running, his intelligence in the game, he was the full package. And I think when I talk about the physical, could Drico hurt? It's probably you're not meeting a big, massive beast on the field. But he was incredibly physical, and he loved the collisions and
another good man to poach,
a counter rucker and a poacher, and probably himself and Darcy for Ireland were so effective for a number of years. But full package really, I think, and that's again pretty self-explanatory.
Dan Carter and Justin Marshall in the halfbacks.
Yeah, we didn't say much about Nanu, but again, Nanu could have played in the back row or as a number 8.
And longevity as well, like.
Yeah, and incredible skills too. Subtle touch, would truck it up when he needed to, but also could just put it through the hands. Like, Dan Carter then and Justin Marshall, halfback, favouring a few New Zealanders there, but again,
Johnny Wilkinson must have come close.
Yeah, he did, and I stayed away from the O'Gara Sexton scenario because, again, I didn't play against them when they were at the top of their game. So obviously I played with Rog for a long, long period, and they're worth mentioning because if you were picking, particularly in the professional era, if you were picking, the greatest fly halves that have played the game, I think they come up, and Sexton keeps getting better and keeps.
If you consider those four at the peak of their powers, to change the question slightly, Wilkinson, Sexton, O'Gara and Carter.
See, I knew you'd get me into this.
You don't make it easy, Adrian.
No.
Where would you go? What's your order, actually?
I'm not giving you an order, but I said I'm still probably leaning with Carter because of his incredible ability to run with the ball. I think he was someone when he was really quick, that when he was at the top of his game, you could nearly put him on the wing. He had incredible acceleration. He had an ability to score a lot of tries, which maybe the others didn't. Physically, unbelievable specimen, and the attacking and the kicking game and everything, full package. And you think of that Lions performance in Wellington in 2005, phenomenal, and the longevity again. So all top class players. I went for Carter. Scrum half, I had to think a little bit more about that, and I was always a great fan of Justin Marshall, even though I wanted to kill him on the field when I played against him. And I played a bit more against him because when he went to Saracens and went to Ospreys, we played against him. I've become great pals with him over the years. He had an arrogance about him and a kind of a cockiness that you love in a scrum half, that you would love to be playing with him because he backed his ability and had that swagger as a scrum half. if you're playing against him, you want to clip him and you want to get at him. And but I just think again, he was a running scrum half as well. You know,
George Gregan would have been in the mix.
Yeah, I would have played against him. I think once or twice, maybe 2 or 3 times, because we played Australia, and a couple of my caps were on tour there and in Dublin as well. And yeah, again, it's you're leaving someone out like that. Mike Phillips kind of came to mind,
right?
Because we played against him a lot with Scarlets in Wales, and I just think that his physicality and presence as well. But I think Marshall kind of was the full package for me.
Let's get into it in the pack. I'm going to scoot through the front row. We've Tony Woodcock, Keith Wood, and Phil Vickery. Ibanez, might be a few other names that might have come close, but
absolutely, yeah. I put Woody in there because I would have played against Woody for Quins in '97.
And also if you met him after picking your team and you hadn't.
Yeah, but you could have put
that too.
You could have put a couple of more hookers in there as well. And as you say, Ibanez was one that steps right up. Again, I don't think any players will be offended by this not being selected in Alan Quinlan's best team he played against.
Your short list for the second row, and you can announce the winners. Victor Matfield, Backy's Botha, Brad Thorne, Fabian Palouse, Martin Johnson.
Yeah, I kind of...
There's probably more, but I mean, that's
of course there is. Alan Wynne-Jones, did you say him?
I didn't.
Ben Kay. Players who had an impact as well in the time I was. Ben Kay won a World Cup, won European Cups, beat us in the European final, was a brilliant line-out operator. Again, what are you judging her on? Overall play or expertise in their area? He was someone who was ahead of everyone running a line-out, calling line-outs, stealing line-outs. Matfield, he was a genius. He was like Paul, obviously, the way they could run a line-out and the impact. Martin Johnson, for what he did, I think goes in there because I just think he was an incredible leader, and the impact he had on obviously winning a World Cup with England and winning lots of trophies with Leicester.
A player
as well.
that you tried to target when you were playing against him, or you just leave him off to you don't want to ride him?
Target in a sense, you want to kind of get stuck into him and get in his face, but he was tough as nails. You know what I mean? He was pure English, if you understand what I mean. Like he was incredibly passionate, and he kind of riled you up, that you wanted to get at him and get in his face and stuff like that. But he was a brilliant player. I remember the '97 Lions tour going, this guy's as tough as nails. To go there as a young player and have the impact he had in winning that series in '97, and again longevity. Probably not the most skillful player in the world. He's not going to be your ball player if he's in the modern game, but work rate, honesty, passion, line-out ability, physicality, and leadership. It's hard to leave him out. I think if you're picking 2 footballing kind of second rows, you're going Victor Matfield. To leave him out is really difficult. Yeah. So I went for Backy's Botha. I went for 2 brutes in the second row.
That says a lot about you, Quinny.
Yeah, absolutely.
Let's get into the back row. So I'll give some of the options here, and again there'll be more, but you can pick your.
I should have mentioned Rob Howley at scrum half as well.
Oh yeah.
Who kind of came to my mind as well. He was a brilliant player, incredible for Cardiff, Wales, Lions.
Across the back row, Richard Hill, Serge Betson, Rocky Elsom, Olivier Magna, George Smith, Richie McCaw, Jamie Heaslip, Lawrence Delalio. It's not a bad lineup. What 3 have you gone for?
Francois Pienaar out there. And,
Pienaar, yeah.
Jerry Collins.
Right.
Did you say Schalkberger?
I didn't.
Haran Ardiki.
Wow.
Emmanuel Haran Ardiki. What a footballer, what a player. Francois Pienaar. When we played against them in 99-2000 with Munster, I had his book. I think I got it the previous year, and I had to get him to. I wanted him to sign the book after the game in Thomond Park. I didn't have the confidence to do it over in Vicarage Road when we beat them the first time pre-Christmas that year. He was an incredible player. I just think the ones that kind of jumped up out and I played against a lot were, I just thought Richard Hill, phenomenal footballer, phenomenal player.
He goes in at blindside, you have him in.
Jerome Kano, again, what a player. Lawrence Delalio, I just think I love Lawrence with the passion, the energy. A fella you'd love to go out onto the field with. Developed his game a lot to being a great ball carrier and very intelligent player. I think that pass in that World Cup final to Jason Robinson in 2002, Delalio was involved in that interlink play, and I remember thinking, God, he's become a good footballer now. Superb leadership, obviously, and then Richie McCaw at 7. You know, again, self-explanatory. I played against him a couple of times, but when you think you're leaving out someone like Jerry Collins, Jerome Kano, Thierry Dusautoir, Emmanuel Haranordaki, Serge Betson, Schalk Berger, you know, you mentioned Heaslip. I didn't play against Jamie. Ended up playing with him. I think in that last game that I played against New Zealand, I think he was playing that day. But you could put more Irish players in there and argue the toss with some of them, but it's hard to leave some out. And the reason I kind of I just put him in is because they came to my mind kind of early, and I played against them. But anybody could pick a team. If you picked a team that your favourite team of the professional era, there would be a lot of stars there as well, you know what I mean? But it's a hell of a team.
Queenie, is there a trait that all of them have in common? Like you've mentioned there a few times, not the most skillful, but the passion and...
some of those names, I think, they're reflective of your personality, some of the...
You see, the other thing is when I played, I loved to throw passes, 20-yard passes, and do crossfield kicks, and that probably cost me a few caps. It certainly did with Eddie. Eddie O'Sullivan used to be fuming with me, not sticking to game plans and trying the stupid things. And but, you know, I think then, Aisling, of fellas I would like to go out on the field with.
That's what I was getting
people
from.
often ask me, what do I miss most about the game? Do I miss the buzz? And, you know, having been in New Zealand, would I love to have played? Not necessarily played, but I love the dressing room. That adrenaline rush when you're looking around and there's a few fellas in there that you think, you wouldn't have to be doing any roaring or shouting with Martin Johnson or Delalio, you know, and you can imagine looking across at Keith Wood or even Drico or Man Anu, and thinking, you know, they're going to be kind of getting you well pumped up for this. So probably that bit of, you know, confrontational style as well.
Quinlan on the bench. Thanks a million for coming in. That was great. Good to see you again.
I'd be about
the match
5 miles.
The match day 24.
If you ran the bench about 5 miles outside the stadium, maybe,
Thanks, Quinny. Thanks, William, for coming in. It is gone at 9:15. You're watching OTB AM, and we're brought to you live each morning by Gillette Labs for an effortless finish to your day. Packed OTB Sports Radio over the course of the day as well. Here's a bit of a flavour of that. You're going to have the football kick-off live from 11:30 this morning. Ger, Phil and David Connolly this morning. Emmanuel Petit on OTB Goal from 1. Kilkenny's Mount Rushmore at 3 o'clock today. Pat Fenlon is the Team 33 interview at 4, and the Life and Times of Johnny Kilban at 6 o'clock. You can follow across all of our social channels. If you're watching us on YouTube, don't forget to hit like and subscribe as well, and as well download the OTB Sports app for the latest and best in sports content and analysis. Back after this upcoming break with the Athletics' Dominic Fifield on what's been a significant week of change at Chelsea.
OTB AM on OTB Sports Radio, Ireland's first and only sports radio station.
Off the ball.
Anthony. That will be the front three for Manchester United. Martial, Alanga and Anthony. I've laughed my socks off if that actually happened.
There was this left back down at West Ham, and I'd done him once, and I went back and I'd done him again. And then I'd done him a third time, and I thought, yeah, I'm going to have a go again. Flicked the ball around and nutmegged him and got by him. Anyway, he took me out about waist height, right? And I went down, and I got up again. I turned to the referee, and the referee said, you deserve that, mate.
Subscribe now to the OTB Football Podcast stream wherever you get your podcasts, and download the OTB Sports app.
Things that put people off on a first date. Showing up late and getting your name wrong. Always a great start. Looking at their phone more than you? Hello? Someone who only talks about themselves. Oh, really? God, aren't you great? Look, no one said dating is perfect, but at GoDating.ie, we promise we'll always try and find your perfect match. Because somewhere out there, there's someone for you. And GoDating.ie will help you find them. Yes, even you, socks and sandals guy.
Go on, go for it with godating.ie.
If your business relies on a van, that wouldn't sound good. But this does. Get up to 75% off van insurance. Now available in FBD branches nationwide. FBD Insurance. Support. It's what we do. 75% no claims discount based on 5 years claims free. Available on new van policies used for farm or business purposes. Terms and conditions apply. Underwritten by FBD Insurance plc. FBD Insurance Group Limited, trading as FBD Insurance, is regulated by the Central Bank of Ireland.
OTB AM.
With Gillette. Get into your flow with the new Gillette Labs Razor with exfoliating bar.
Dominic Fifield of The Athletic is on the line. Morning, Dominic.
Good morning, how are you doing?
Good, and thanks for your patience there. We were deep in conversation about the rugby, but back to the football with us. A lot of chat about the shortlist at Chelsea during the week after Tuchel walked the plank, but it was decisive, swift and successful obviously in the end. And the shortlist seemed to have, I mean, maybe slightly more than one name on it, but one very clear outcome that they wanted.
Yeah, it sounds as if they'd earmarked Graham Potter as their preferred choice to take the club forward for a while, to be honest. And I imagine that the other names on the shortlist were there as a safety net, really, just in case Potter had second thoughts or they couldn't agree a deal with Brighton. But the existence of the release clause made that a formality, really. Yeah, he's in situ and taking training today, Friday. I imagine. I know obviously everything's up in the air at the moment over here in terms of whether the games will be played, but if he doesn't play this weekend at Fulham on Saturday lunchtime, then his first game will presumably be the Salzburg match on Wednesday. I would very much doubt the Liverpool fixture will take place the following weekend, and in some strange ways, I mean, obviously it might sound inappropriate to say it, but a few days grace for him to try and work with the players on the training ground and get some of his ideas across to them after that Salzburg game before they all disappear off for international duty might be a bit of a blessing for Graham Potter.
Yeah, I'm sure quietly that's definitely in the front of his mind probably. We're obviously still getting to know and reading pieces, including on The Athletic, about like how the new owners are going to run the club and the types of owners that they are. Like the appointment happened so quickly in the end, and the call went into the Brighton owners very quickly after Tuchel had gone, it seems. I guess when you're approaching somebody at a club with a less heralded profile and a manager who's less heralded in the sense that he doesn't have the enormous profile maybe as some of the other names that were mentioned, there's some confidence on the owner's part that, well, we're going to be able to get this done either way.
Yes, although I guess Graham Potter would have needed assurances that Todd Bowley and Clearlake Capital are thinking long term. That Chelsea, under the previous regime, we all know, I've spoken to you guys about it before in the past, I mean, they were hire and fire. The first blip that a manager or head coach encountered, whether that be 4 games or 6 games, that was pretty much the end of the road for the man in charge. There were a few sort of lingering departures. I think virtually all the Italians, bar Roberto Di Matteo, saw out a season knowing that they were going to get replaced in the summer. But, you know, generally speaking, once you had a blip and you lost the dressing room, or you lost your way, or indeed Champions League football qualification was threatened, you were out the door. And that reputation has now extended into this new ownership because, you know, at first glance, you look at what's happened in this last week, and Chelsea's new owners have sacked a manager after 7 matches. Actually, they would argue that they want someone in place that they feel they can work with, and they can work with for the long term. And once they assured Graham Potter that that's what they want to do, and they said to him, look, that you will be given time and we will be patient, and we don't expect you to sort of revolutionise the way Chelsea are playing overnight. We don't expect you to be winning the Premier League title, I imagine, this season. I'm pretty sure that conversation must have happened. I think he was probably reassured, and that's a decisive factor in him coming to Chelsea, because he doesn't, from his point of view, this is an opportunity, a massive opportunity for him to make his mark at an elite club. These opportunities come very, very rarely. They come even, for young English coaches, they're even rarer still. So he would have looked at it and thought, can I make this my project? Will I be given the leeway here to do what I've done at Brighton? his revolution at Brighton was not overnight. They finished 15th in his first season and 16th in his second season. So there were even last year when they finished 9th, their highest ever finish. There was a period, I think, of 11 games in the middle of the season where they didn't win a match. I think they lost 5 on the bounce in the spring. There were periods where the home supporters of the Amex were booing. You know, that's the season they finished 9th. So, but Brighton treated him. They gave him that opportunity, that leeway, that time, and the patience to build. And you know, the way they've been playing football this season is really a result of, you know, over 3 years hard work.
Yeah, it's been so impressive what he's done at Brighton, and I think that is what they want him to do at Chelsea. Like a 5-year contract is quite a long time, but they want him maybe to build even the structures, the ethos within the club. You know, they talked about all of this, so it seems like it's a complete rebuilding job almost.
Well, it is. I mean, and that's to be expected because of the unique scenario and situation at Chelsea really since March. We shouldn't forget the trauma at that club really from March time, and Thomas Tuchel actually was the man who carried that team through, carried the weight of all of that on his shoulders, and was the public face of Chelsea under sanction. We didn't hear much from any of the members of the hierarchy at the time, of anything at all. And he deserves credit for that. But the sense of trauma, it's akin really to a club in administration. You know, the players have really played through uncertainty for a period of time. Not as long as some clubs have endured, but for 3 months things look a bit dicey, things look a bit precarious. Then this takeover is rushed through. People are coming into the club, and on the one hand, they want to make it their own. They want to establish it that this is our club now. This is Bowley Clearlake's club. It's not Abramovich's anymore, and they want to break from the past. So it's no surprise in that context that Marina Granovskaya, Petr Cech, Bruce Buck, etc., Guy Lawrence, they all leave. But on the other hand, these guys are learning on the hoof. They don't know how to run a Premier League football club. They're learning as they go along, and I think that created its own issues over the summer, not least in the transfer market, and that's one of the complaints that Tuchel definitely had towards the end, and definitely contributed to the fracture in relationships and communication at the top of that club. But now they're in a position where, okay, they don't have a technical director in place, although they want to, you know, remedy that certainly by the World Cup and the next transfer window. But they really are shaping it in their as they want it to be now. They have their own man at the top who they feel they can work with, and they clearly over 100 days realised that they couldn't work with Thomas Tuchel. So their own coach on a long-term contract with a long-term vision. They will bring in that sporting director to guide them through the next transfer window and to instigate the philosophy change and to long-term plan, etc., etc. And I think actually when you look at certainly Bowley's other sporting interests, the LA Dodgers, I mean, he hasn't been a hire and fire owner. Okay, he owns, I think it's 20% through Guggenheim over there, but he's not somebody that wants to tear it up in the way that Abramovich did every time everything went wrong. He wants long-term planning, he wants stability, and Clearlake Capital is, I mean, they're in this ultimately, I imagine, to make profit. And look at the amount of compensation paid out over the Abramovich era and the losses made there. They don't want to be spending £250 million every transfer window to revamp the squad. They need some kind of long-term strategy and approach that will allow them to be sustainable. This is the best way of doing it. And the only surprise of it all is the timing after 7 games. I mean, that's the thing. I mean, you look at it and wonder whether this change could have been made in the summer, but maybe these guys just had to learn that over a period of time that they weren't going to be able to work together.
Yeah, it did look like as if the writing was on the wall. Some of the stuff that's emerged, I was reading some stuff in The Athletic yesterday about them saying internally that Tuchel was a nightmare to deal with around transfers particularly, which it doesn't seem like a most amazing working environment. Just on Aisling mentioned earlier on just about the methods, I think, of Potter and the stuff that he's become known for at building up that Brighton side. How does that play out now with, like, it's different to doing that with Pascal Gross than it is with they're not like a squad of Galacticos, but they are a step up in quality. So how does that work for him, Dominic, in your view, in terms of trying to make players better, I guess, which is the ultimate acid test of any manager?
Well, when I'm actually writing a piece on this at the moment for next week, and I initially thought this is going to be bloody difficult for Graham Potter, because he's between now and when the appointment was made, between now and the World Cup, Chelsea play every midweek. There isn't a break for him to train, and you'd imagine that all the things that he wants to do, whether that be player flexibility, structure of a team, positioning on a pitch, that is done by drumming it in over and over and over again incessantly on the training ground. And he's simply not going to have that opportunity, because it'll be match recovery session, preparational session, recovery, etc., from now until the end of time, pretty much. So I envisage that it would be a real problem for him. But speaking to a couple of people last night who have worked with him and worked with him at Brighton and Swansea, etc., their attitude was, well, he instigated almost cultural change, certainly at Brighton, from the previous regime to his. It was chalk and cheese. It was direct football. It was very defensive football, becoming more expansive and attack minded and progressive. He's not having to make that same level of change at Chelsea. These guys are better quality players. There's more pedigree in this Chelsea team, even amongst the younger players in the Chelsea squad. For them, I wouldn't have thought that a lot of the techniques that he will introduce in the few training sessions he has will be a shock. They won't be a shock to the system. They'll adapt to them very simply and very quickly, I would have thought, and they'll be able to take it all on board much quicker than they did down at Brighton when he went there in 2019. So I'm not sure it will be quite as much upheaval as it was at his previous clubs. It should adapt quicker. The thing that he's got to deal with most of all, I mean, certainly get egos in the dressing room. I mean, people like Thiago Silva, Koulibaly, Aubameyang, etc. He's never dealt with this caliber of player, people with lofty reputations, and he's going to have to do that. But we're told that his communication skills are one of his fortes. So I mean, I imagine that he will actually relish the chance to work with people like this. The other thing is the pressure. It's a very competitive Premier League this season at both ends of the table. Chelsea needs to be qualifying for the Champions League. I mean, that will remain the bare minimum that any Chelsea ownership, I suspect, will expect. Not least after spending all that money in the summer as well. So, if there are blips and bumps along the road, he's going to have to recover quickly. He's going to have to, pick chins up, make sure that the players are recovered and can focus again to ensure that they do finish in that top four place. And that maybe is a different level of pressure than he's been used to in the past.
Yeah, we'll see how it plays out over the coming months. Dominic, thanks a million.
Pleasure.
Thanks a lot, Dominic Fifield of The Athletic, talking all things Chelsea and Graham Potter specifically. It is 9:32 on this Friday morning, and Aisling, the club GA Championship is beginning to heat up a bit. What should we be keeping an eye out for this weekend?
Yeah, there's
our card.
A lot of games across the weekend, lots to look forward to. Just to pick out maybe 2 or 3. So there's a local derby. It's Crossmaglen versus Silverbridge. This is in Armagh. This is just a round 1 now, but it's a really big game to pick out. It's on actually live on TG Cahir on Sunday at 4 o'clock. You can tune into that. There's a young team in Silverbridge, the likes of Jarlath Burns will play with them, and then of course we know Crossmaglen, Rian and Oisin O'Neill, James Morgan, Jamie Clark. So yeah, I definitely tune into that one. Another one that I'd look out for, maybe even the streams are live on clubber.ie it's called, so you can get the Kerry Senior Championship on that. And there's round 1 in that as well. So you have Austin Stacks versus Tralee. That's at 8 p.m. tonight, and it's live at Austin Stacks Park as well if you wanted to head along. And also Temple No versus South Kerry. That's at 3:45 in Fitzgerald Stadium on Sunday. So yeah, massive game there if you want to see some of the All-Ireland champions in action. One to watch out for then as well. So we have the Waterford hurling final, of course. Ballygunner versus Mount Sion. That's probably the one of the weekend, the game of the weekend, I would say.
Yeah, there'll be plenty of chatter on the stands as well. Dan Shanahan has announced his retirement from club hurling.
That's right. This
morning, so
the exit from the club championship.
About that, down there.
45 years
it's incredible,
of age.
Isn't it?
Unbelievable. What a player. Yeah, unbelievable. So Ballygunner, of course, reigning All Ireland senior champions. The likes of Desi Hutchinson, the main man there. So that'll be a good game, of course. Mount Sion, you have the likes of Austin Gleeson in there. So that is live on TG Carrot at 2 p.m. on Sunday. And then as well, in the women's, there's probably the pick out of that, I would say, is in Armagh this weekend. You have the quarterfinals of the senior taking place. So yeah, I would tune in for that. There's some really brilliant games across there as well.
All right. Thanks a million for that, Aisling. Fair play. And that is pretty much it from us for this morning. It is 25 to 10. It's been an enjoyable last couple of hours. We're brought to you live each morning by Gillette Labs for an effortless finish to your day. We're back on Monday morning from 7:30. It'll be Jared and Nathan, and they'll be here to take us through the Gillette Labs performance rankings, depending, of course, what happens with sport at the weekend. It might just be everything is sitting in the orange. There's nothing. We'll have the Club GA will be all over it. Actually, that's it.
The Club GA is going ahead. That's for sure.
Exactly. Yeah, we're going to have Mark Lawrenson and Martin Lipton on the line to hopefully talk about all of that. We'll be joined in the studio by Jenny Claffey as well, a reasoned voice on tennis, to talk about the US Open finals. Right now, we're going to leave you with the Ireland men's rugby sevens captain Billy Dardis. He was talking to Nathan on last night's show.
Now, the Irish men's and women's 17s are currently in South Africa putting together their final preparations ahead of the World Cup this weekend. I'm delighted that we can now welcome the Irish men's rugby sevens captain Billy Dardis to the show ahead of that World Cup in Cape Town. The Ireland men's and women's teams each secured World Cup qualification earlier this year after record-breaking seasons, which saw both sides go unbeaten in the Rugby Europe event. Billy is also Senior Vice President of Operations at Triton Lake, who are, of course, proud title sponsors of Irish Sevens Rugby since June of 2021. Billy, welcome along.
Thanks very much, Will. Good to chat.
How are preparations going? I saw you getting the pictures taken above the Cape earlier today. It's just a couple of days away now from the championships getting underway for what's going to be your second World Cup. How have the preparations been over the last week?
Yeah, it's been really good. We just came off the back of our final leg of the World Series of this season in LA. So we flew straight from LA down to Cape Town via Doha. It was a long enough trip. So we hit the road straight after that. That was about, I think we got here just over a week ago. And so, yeah, we've had a good week's prep there, a good bit of training. And yeah, no, we're well settled and looking forward to getting going. I suppose we've been waiting not too long, qualified only just over a month ago. So it should be a great tournament. I think they've sold over 170,000 tickets for the weekend, which is huge. So I'm sure the place will be rocking all weekend. So it should be a good tournament.
Two sides to the jet-setting lifestyle. On the one hand, now being at the elite level of the Rugby 7 series, you get to go to all these exotic locations and travel around the world. But also the fatigue of all that travel has to count a little bit as well, particularly having to come from the west coast of the United States through the Middle East and then to South Africa ahead of this major tournament as well.
Yeah, it is mad. I suppose it just comes with the World Series. This year, we travelled from, Singapore to Vancouver. It was a 16-hour time difference, and that really did mess with your head a little bit. And this has been similar enough. I suppose it took us 3 or 4 days to really settle down and get our heads around it, just in terms of sleep and just you feel a little bit lethargic for a while. But yeah, I suppose we're well used to it now in the World Series. Some of the young guys, they're kind of feeling it a little bit, but at the same time, you can't really complain when we got to spend a week in LA, got to play in a cool tournament out there, and then you're flying straight down to Cape Town. I suppose that's the perks of it. It can be quite challenging, but especially trying to perform on the world stage. But at the same time, everyone here is in the same boat, and we're all coming from the same location. So I think you can only really look at the positives. We get to travel the world with our best mates, play in front of these massive crowds. And it's great fun at the same time. So no, it has been a crazy year, and everyone is just looking forward to this big tournament on the back of kind of a really good season for us as a squad, coming 5th in the world. We're just hoping to build on that and hopefully continue building that momentum into this weekend.
What a journey it's been. I mean, you can give us an insight into this because you've been involved for the last 7 seasons, but to go from the team being effectively reformed, going through, eventually working your way up through the tournaments, then getting on to the World Series, and now to be considered among the top 5 in the world, having gone to an Olympics in the year just gone by. That's quite a journey from when you had left Leinster and then went into the Sevens programme.
Yeah, it's been wild. I suppose last year when we qualified for Tokyo and went to the Olympics, that was a real moment to reflect on it all. That journey. I remember when we qualified, just standing on the pitch in Monaco and talking to Anthony Eddy and David Ford, just thinking how this program's gone from literally the basement of Europe, where us as a squad were based out of 62 Lansdowne Road. We'd make our way into train there, and you might have 7 or 8 lads training in the cold in winter and not really knowing where things are going. And it was still trying to get up off the ground. We weren't playing in the biggest tournaments in the world. We were playing in front of a man and a dog against some lower tier nations in World Rugby. To then qualifying for a World Series, we went to the last World Cup in San Francisco, and then ultimately going to the Olympics. I suppose that was the biggest stepping stone for us as a program. To now, yeah, we're not only just going to these tournaments to compete and I suppose make up the numbers, or like we're not just happy to be there. We now have guys that want to go there and win medals. They want to win tournaments. We still haven't done that. We've come second, we've come third in World Series tournaments, but we haven't won anything. And now we've got guys who, yeah, as well as winning, want to be some of the best players in the world. So it's come on an incredible amount, and it has been such a journey, such a fun journey, to be honest with you. We've had great crack along the way. We've been to some incredible places, played in some great tournaments, and had some really memorable moments. But yeah, I'm hoping this, like as David Nusfor has put it to us in the last few days, that the bus doesn't just stop at the Olympics. It's wanting to win the World Cup or wanting to get a medal at the next Olympics. So we're hoping this weekend will be another memorable weekend for Irish Sevens.
Yeah, because I was kind of thinking about that journey where some of your mates who would have been there early in the programme dropped off, and some retired naturally after the Olympic cycle came to an end a year later than was anticipated, given that the Tokyo Games were in 2021. We're now just a couple of years out, though, from Paris, and I was reading early in the week, you've got lofty ambitions. You genuinely believe that this team can be competing for a medal when the Stade de France comes around in a couple of years' time.
Big time. Yeah, absolutely. We came fifth this year in the overall standings out of, what was it, 9 or 10 or 8 or 10 legs, something like that. So we're extremely consistent. We made 8 out of 9 quarterfinals or something like that. And that's a big step for us. It is such a tough tournament. The series is extremely tough. All the teams are extremely competitive, but I think when we're only getting better. I think we have the momentum, and the trajectory is only upwards for us. We've had a few kind of stumbling blocks along the way, but I do really think that with the way the program is going, the amount of kind of support we're getting from the IRFU, the players that we have, and just the experience we've built. I think a lot can be said for experience on a sevens pitch, and even not even on the pitch, but the sevens environment. It is a bit of a madhouse sometimes, but the more experienced heads you have around the place, the better. And I think we have gained a lot of experience through the years. And I think if we can keep the most part of the group that we have at the moment, I think if we keep improving a little bit more, gaining more experience and adding in that kind of sprinkle of talent from the academies and stuff like that. And I do think in 2 years' time, when the Olympics is only around the corner, I do think we have a good chance of putting our hands up there. But I suppose at the same time, there's a lot to be played before then. We have obviously this weekend the World Cup. I mean, the full season next season, which is also a qualifying season. So top 4, I think, qualify for the Olympics, which we'd like to be in the shout for that. We'd like to be in the run for that, because it'd mean we wouldn't have to play a qualifying tournament, a one-off tournament. We just have to try and qualify as a top 4. And that would mean, or else try and qualify next summer through a qualifying tournament, which would give us a year to prep for the Olympics. Unlike last summer, we had 3 weeks to get our heads around the fact that we just qualified and that had to prep for the Olympics. But I think since Tokyo, I've kind of tried to figure out what I want to focus on next, and so did the rest of the lads. And I think a podium position in Paris and Stade de France. I think all the medals are handed out underneath the Eiffel Tower. I think that's where all of us want to be in 2 years' time. I think it's something that is really driving the squad. And it's a pretty exciting and lofty goal, as you say, but I think you have to dream big and go for things that are just out of reach. But if you work hard enough, you can actually make them happen. So.
Well, dreaming big in this weekend to come. You look at the potential brackets, which I think we all probably have done before the tournament gets underway. You open against Portugal, which is a game you'd be expected to win. I've no doubt you're going to say you have to be focused, and that's a huge banana skin potentially at the outset. Yeah. But even after that, you're looking at England, New Zealand potentially being on the route towards winning a medal here. You're going to have no easy run to a final in Cape Town if that's what's going to happen.
No, and this kind of format's very unforgiving. We figured that out the last World Cup. We played Chile in our first game, and no, we didn't take them for granted. We probably went into the game thinking similar to this weekend that, yeah, we kind of are favourites, but we probably took them for granted and almost lost that game. So a lot of the experienced heads in the squad know that if you take these games lightly, it can you really can end up with egg on your face. So no, I think we know what's going to come with Portugal. They're going to be very dogged and niggly, but we just have to be really clinical. I suppose that's the most important thing. Like, we know how good we are. Like, we've beaten the likes of Fiji and South Africa. We've put it up to the likes of New Zealand. It's just when you come to these teams, you have to be really clinical, really on the ball, and execute every kind of, like, take every opportunity that you're given. Because if you're a little bit off, lackadaisical, they can turn into a real dogfight. So yeah, that'll be a big one for us. First up. And it's the first game of the World Cup. It's an 8:45 kickoff in the morning, first game. So there shouldn't be too much of a crowd there, which is a little bit daunting, but should be a good one to kick things off. And then yeah, like you have the potential of playing England in that second round game on Friday night, which would be a really good, or Friday afternoon. That'd be a great one to play in. We've had some good battles with them through the years. We've beaten them a few times this year. And then I think I haven't examined the draw exactly, but I'm pretty sure I think you can play potentially South Africa in that quarterfinal, World Cup quarterfinal on the Saturday night, which would have the place rocking. Whenever South Africa play in this tournament, in this stadium, the place is electric. And I think, even speaking to the old boys, it'll be one of the biggest games of our lives. Just, it'd have a real test atmosphere about it, I think. It'd just be a real cauldron of pressure, and just, if you can stand up in the face of that, it's a big testament to you as a person and you as a team. So I think we're not going to worry about that too much, but then again, today David Nusfor said to us, we want to play in the first game of the tournament, and we also want to play in the last game of the tournament. So big motivation for us all, and it should be really exciting.
When it comes to delivering in games like this, and look, touch wood, you will get to battle against South Africa in the last 8 competition at the World Cup itself. Do you draw on the experience of some of the big games that you have played over the last couple of years? Like, I think back to the qualifying tournament and, being up against it and having to put in a big last 6 or 7 minutes in that game to ensure you're going to an Olympics. I'm sure that all that experience has to actually help you when you come to big events like this. Yeah, 100%. You definitely need kind of fresh energy, and the guys that have come in this year, guys like Andrew Smith and Che Mullins and others, like, they've added such an energy to the squad and different dynamic. They have added to the squad, but then at the same time, when you come up against it and there's a lot of pressure and there's high stakes, it makes players do funny things. The added bit of pressure can make you kind of overthink things, cloud up in the mind, and make some bad decisions. But it does. We've kind of learned through the years that when the pressure does come on, if you can, and the fatigue, I suppose, it'd be, I suppose you'd be doing a disservice to sevens, not to mention the fatigue that comes up, that you come under in a sevens game. When that fatigue sets in, when you're under extreme stress and there's the pressure in the crowd, being able to calm your mind, being able to slow down your heart rate,
and do the simple things really well. And like when I say simple, it's like controlling what you can control, setting first, getting your eyes up, and then communicating really well, telling the people inside and outside you what to do and making their jobs really easy. That is the difference. And especially in games like that, if you're in minute 12 and you're in a draw, or you're 3 points down or one score down, being able to execute all those finer, smaller details are the difference. And we've seen it time and time again, whether it's on the World Series or in those big, high-pressure qualifying tournaments and games. It's, the team that doesn't crack, but the team that can stay the most composed and execute under pressure is the team that's going to come out on top. So, I think we've a decent amount of experience in that department, the likes of Harry McNulty, Brian Mullen, Jack Kelly, Terry Kennedy, Mark Roach, these guys, Hugo Lennox, these guys have all kind of come under that pressure at some point in time. And I think they're all they all know what it takes to execute. It's just about, bringing the young guys along, bringing them guys on the experience and helping them through it. And then, executing when the pressure does come on.
2022 has been an incredible year for Terry Kennedy, especially. Like, looking at his stats here, they're pretty scary. Leading try scorer across the year, he's got 50 tries in 52 games, which is an incredible strike rate. He's also had the most assists on the World Series, and he's leading the carries going into this week for the World Cup as well. And if you've had him in looking at the dream team, he's basically the top player that we've seen so far this year. He's been producing remarkable numbers for you.
Yeah, I said it there during the week. He has been unplayable this year, and speaking to other captains, they're just like, what? Like, he is so good. He is. He's ridiculous. He's pulled out some results for us by himself at times this year. And some guys get a little bit lazy sometimes when you're watching him, and he's just scoring tries for fun. I don't know. And he's been on form for the last 2-3 years. And it's not like it came out of nowhere. He's been quite a well-known person in Irish rugby. I suppose he was unlucky with the Irish 20s years ago not to get a look in. But he just scores tries for fun in the World Series. He's so much time on the ball. He's extremely fit, so he sees he's able to see things before they happen. He can make your job really easy by telling you what to do, and everyone else is really blowing hard on the pitch. He has enough energy to have a look up, communicate, and make good decisions. He's been extremely competitive this year. I think that's the thing that I like to look at, is how he's been driving the group. So it's not just his own performances. It's not a selfish thing. He wants to drive the team. He wants to win. And he's been barking at guys all year. He's been a real leader for the squad throughout, right from our first leg in Dubai, right through to LA last week. He's been leading it. And I suppose those numbers, those World Series stats, and the awards he won last week are all nice. I think it's a great recognition of how he's gone in the last year, and even the last 2 years, 2-3 years for us. I think it'll be up to us this weekend now to try and step up and meet that kind of what he demands out of us, because the amount of effort and work he puts into the squad, it'd be nice to put on for us as a team, to put on a good performance and match what he's done for us throughout the year.
And it means, like, you've got multiple threats across that team. If it wasn't a couple of years ago that Jordan Conroy was going to the top of all these lists with the tries that he was scoring as well, like, multiple threats are pretty key if you're going to go deep into this tournament. Jordo's been incredible for the last 5 years for Irish Sevens. He's kind of been the poster boy, and similar to Terry, he's pulled out results for us when we really needed it. So they're like I'd say defending those is an absolute nightmare. And Jordo said it before, is just because if Terry isn't going to run around you, he can pass to Jordo, and Jordo will skin you. He's just electric. And then inside them, you've the likes of Hugo Lennox and Sean Cribbin, who are two of the most skillful players I know. In sevens, certainly, they're high risk, high reward players, which can often count against them at times, but they're incredibly good footballers.
and they really do go for it, and they complement the guys outside them. So they really do complement the likes of Terry and Jordo. They put them in good space, make good decisions. Then you have the likes of Roachy, Mark Roach. You've Harry McNulty, who is as solid as ever, just the most durable player on the World Series. I'd say he gets through every 14 minutes a weekend, which is just incredible. Then you have the likes of Jack Kelly and Brian Mullen, who they're all just workhorses. And there's lots more guys in the squad who are all just they bring their own X factor into the squad. So we do have a lot of threats across the park. It's just, I suppose, when it comes down to sevens, there is a little bit of luck, but there's also, you need things to click early, right from the start, get a bit of confidence. Everyone needs to be moving forward. You need the bounce of the ball sometimes as well. But yeah, I think it has been what other teams point out in us is our continuity within the squad, is that we gel quite well. We all know each other quite well. We played together for so long, and you can see it on the pitch when we click. We can really put teams to the sword, which is a good thing.
Yeah, that's been a bit of a change too, because when the programme started off, sometimes players who were very good at 15s were getting dropped in to be looked at in the sevens. I even think back guys like Robert Balakoon, who played a bit of sevens and then went back to Ulster and into the system there. Really, you've had a kind of a pretty experienced core group of guys. I know you said at the outset you've had people feeding in, and that creates competition within the squad. But if you're going to be a force at, say, the World Series level and going to World Cups, you really do need that continuity and that bond between the team if you're going to progress together as a group.
Yeah, like at the start with the sevens, the turnover was a bit mental. Like each year was a different set of players. I think at the outstart, when it was the likes of Tom Daly, Adam Byrne, Shane Layden, Dan Goggin, these kind of guys, they set the path, and then suddenly they started playing Pro 14 and playing provincial rugby more regularly. So there was a complete turnover, and you had the likes of like a new generation of players. You had Hugh O'Keenan, Jimmy O'Brien, Rob Balakoon was a little bit later, and Nick Timoney, he was around at the start. You had those guys that stepped up and brought it on a step further as we climbed kind of that ladder in Europe. And then, but like throughout it all, we've kind of, we've done well to maintain this core of players, this 7 or 8 players, kind of the players that I've mentioned twice or 3 times in this already, but they've kind of hung around because, we weren't going back into provinces, so this was our chance to play professional rugby and live out that kind of dream. But you do, like we've seen it with the other countries, you need that core of players, that core spine of a squad, to bring those young guys through, because it's brilliant when you do get the likes of Andrew Smith or Jay Mullins or Hugh O'Keenan or Jimmy O'Brien. When you get them coming into the squad, it's brilliant because it adds the energy, it adds a new skill level, because they want to impress and try and get back into their provinces. So it is brilliant when you get them sprinkled into the squad. But I think it's that combination of the two that is what has made us so, like, I wouldn't say so successful through the years, but has made us one of the forces now in sevens rugby in such a short space of time. And I think that is kind of credit to what like Anthony Eddy created, David Nusfora created, and now James Toppings. There's a good strategy there, and it's worked. And I think Toppers is now kind of bringing us on. He's developing what we're doing. I think sevens in Ireland is only going to grow. I think there's good plans to grow out sevens in Europe and especially in Ireland, to try and grow the game, get more players playing, and then also try and it has churned out a good few players to the national team. So it's a really good product. So I think the more players that can play, it can only be better for Irish rugby, because the contribution it's made to Irish rugby, you can only see with someone like Hugo Keenan how, I know his game isn't just because of sevens, but
he's mentioned a few times it's enhanced his skills. Like even the lines that he ran, he thinks he's become a better, more intelligent rugby player from his experience at sevens.
Yeah, I would like to think so, and I think it kind of developed his skills. And then as well as that on-pitch stuff, it's the off-field stuff. You get put under the pressure of having to travel around the world. be a professional under that pressure, playing these massive crowds. It's just a great experience. So yeah, it's a really good product, and it's exciting to see. It'll be exciting to see who else we churn out, who's going to be the next Hugh Keenan, someone like Andrew Smith or Che Mullins. Like they're guys that could really make a big impact in Irish rugby, I think, down the line.
Yeah, rugby here on Off the Ball is with thanks to Vodafone, main sponsor of the Irish team of us, everyone in. Just one question for you, Billy, before you finish. You'll probably be keeping a keen eye on how the women's team get on in South Africa over the weekend too. And I mean, they've been ripping it up on the World Series circuit as well. They've got a really good squad established. You know, players who've got 15s experience have gone back in to play with the sevens, very importantly for this World Cup. And I think they're hopeful of a very strong finish this weekend too.
Yeah, absolutely. And I spoke to Lucy there this afternoon. They have got a tough. If they want to get to the final, if they want to lift the World Cup, they've got a tough route with Brazil first up, and then you've got New Zealand. So that's a tough task. But they've been, how would you say, the standard bearers for us, for Irish Sevens this year. They've been absolutely incredible. To see where they've come from is kind of the most impressive thing. Like it was only 2-3 years ago that they were battling it out with the likes of the invitational sides down the lower half of the table, and we're really struggling. And they're kind of met the switch they've made, the progress they've made mentally over the last year or two has just been incredible. And it's been fascinating to watch how much they've grown in confidence, and the results they've got over the last 6 months have just been incredible. They've been very impressive, and I think that they'll be hoping this weekend to continue that momentum, continue that progress. I've no doubt that they will, whether when it comes to that, hopefully that game against the All Blacks, that they do perform and they do play like they can, because they've got some incredible players, the likes of Lucy, Stacey Flood, Amy Lee Murphy-Crowe, and loads of others, the likes of Eve Higgins, Bevan Parsons. They've got some real threats in their team, and now they know that they do have some of the best players in the world, and they do know that when they click as a team, they can beat the best. So I'm looking forward to watching them. That'll be extremely exciting to watch them, because they're a great side to watch, and I hope they can continue that vein of form that they showed throughout the year, because it's brilliant. And I suppose it's one part of the progress that Irish rugby are making with women's rugby in the country is they're kind of leading the way. And it's great for women's rugby that they're able to make this progress and do it on the world stage.
Well, look, fingers crossed for both teams in Cape Town this weekend. Billy, thanks a million for joining us ahead of your World Cup campaign.
Cheers. Thanks very much for your time.
OTB AM.
With Gillette. Get into your flow with the new Gillette Labs Razor with exfoliating bar.